in a world devoid of celestials. A world filled with ambient energy. A world evolved from chaos. From the most spectacular event of the millennia, it was an effulgent sight. The grandiose castle was brightened by various candles. A beautiful blue smoke was emitting out from an awe-inspiring burner. There were plenty of such burners around, releasing the curvy smoke that expanded in the sweet aroma around the castle. A boy was laid on a bed. Beside him was a sorcerer holding a wooden staff, radiating a yellowish-green glow, which was being absorbed into the boy's body. In front of him was a moderately aged man, sitting on a rocking chair of splendid quality, with his head held high and his arms resting on the chair while the other holding a fist in anticipation. Unflinching valor embellished his face, and his eyes contained a noble emanation, proof that he had been involved in a high positioning for quite a while. He was wearing a sleeveless shirt. His bulging muscles and height were eye-catching. If anyone looked at him from front, it would see a dreadful scar on his face. There was a huge horizontal cut running across his dominant face, running all the way to the left side of his mouth. This man also had a dense black beard. At this present man's side was an excellent lady in royal residence articles of clothing. Her exquisite body was thin, and her provisions were normal and pretty. Be that as it may, her face showed up particularly pale and in a bad state. At this particular time, the man and lady, whom were clearly of a wealthy status, had a bit of stress on their countenances, as their sight was glued at the 15-year-old young person situated on a bed before them. The youth's body was somewhat delicate and his eyes were firmly closed. Chaotic lightning chi traversing on his face that became little pale from the ongoing ordeal that is making him twitch and creases his eyebrows from time to time, while the abnormal lightning chi meandered underneath his skin. The severe and wailing thunderclaps faintly repeated. As the mysterious lightning noise resonated, the veins on the youth's temple wriggled, while his body shook persistently. His face bent as though he was bearing an unbelievable torment. Under the glowing particles of light, the weird lightning chi on the adolescent's face continuously started to quiet down. The lightning chi endured for 35 minutes before at long last withdrawing. Eventually, it pulled out into the adolescent's chest. The white-haired elderly person promptly inhaled a breath of relief as though he had been eased of an extraordinary weight. In this manner, he pivoted and bowed to the worriedly holding up moderately aged man and lovely lady in noble pieces of clothing. "Congrats, your majesties," he said and continued. "His Excellency has finally passed the death ordeal. There ought to be no issues in the accompanying few years." Happiness was uncovered on the faces of the man and lady when they heard this, and their firmly grasped clenched hands slowly relaxed. The tough-looking man in sleeveless red dress took a look at the white-haired senior in an eager way and inquired. "Expert Otto. Ezra is now 15 this year. Kids at this age for the most part have chi developed, and can begin their development. What might be said about Ezra?" After hearing this question, the white-haired expert's appearance quickly diminished, before he gently shook his head and answered. "Your Highness, I was alarmed to the amount of the residue of chi in His Excellency's body this time." The stately man's demeanor likewise diminished when he heard this. While cultivating the martial art path began inside one's body, but the body must have been introduced to chi. This is called the chi brightening stage and was the place where all martial arts cultivation started. Through this, cultivators had the option to take in the chi energy of the land and totally change themselves. They are known as spirit marshals. Expert Otto looked at the disappointment on the moderately aged man's face and couldn't resist the opportunity to delicately murmur. His greatness was initially brought into the world with the beast spirit. He would have shocked the world and peered downward on the sky. Who would have expected such an outcome? The moderately aged man's clenched hands firmly, while the delightful woman's eyes turned watery. She covered her mouth and coughed. "My queen, please take care of yourself," Expert Otto hastily said upon seeing this. "You have lost a great amount of chi from nourishing His Highness. You cannot allow your emotions to run wild." The woman in royal pieces of clothing simply waved her hand. Distress surfaced in her eyes as she took a gander at the youth situated on the bed. The curse of God in Ezra's body emits once at regular intervals. Every flare-up is more painful than the last. He can just depend on himself to remove this curse. Yet chi is still in a dormant state. What can anyone do now? The man who had silent all the while now spoke, We should rejoice that his body was even able to survive this ordeal. As for his cultivation, the man just trailed off, but neither the woman nor the elder needed an interpreter to understand what he meant. Expert Otto was quiet for quite a while, before he gradually said. The second these words were said, quietness covered the castle's chamber. The moderately aged man's clenched hands firmly held, as his body faintly shook, while crying clamors were heard through the covered mouth of the woman in noble dress. A somewhat youthful yet quiet voice abruptly arose inside this quietness. Does that mean I just have few years left? The three individuals in the castle were shocked after hearing this. They immediately turned upward, just to see that the boy on the bed had opened his eyes at some obscure time, and was presently gazing at them. The three traded a look. It was clear that none of them had anticipated him to awaken so quickly. Previous times, he had stayed unconscious for a few days before waking up slowly. Ezra, the full name of this youth, who had been called Ezra, was Ezra Zephyr, and the moderately aged man and woman before his eyes were his parents, the king and queen of the Bloodfang Kingdom, Mirza Zephyr and Tanya Inviastus. The prince's young face was somewhat pale, as he pressed together his lips. His body had been fragile since birth, and in this way looked rather insightful. In the wake of being quiet for some seconds, he gradually opened his shirt. A dim dark blue lightning could be seen at Ezra's naked chest, which appeared to be engraved in the deepest part of his body. It gradually squirmed and wriggled, looking actually like an aggressive lightning-winged serpent. A weak, yet incredibly unpleasant and angry aura appeared to rise from it, making him shudder in spite of the fact that it was not cold. Father, Mother, I believe the time has come to tell me about what is happening to me, Ezra said, and involuntarily gritted his teeth, as he gazed at the little lightning serpent-like thing on his chest. It was this very thing that caused him to feel what could be called torment past death. Every few years, this thing would start to act up. It carried with it a perpetual suffering that felt as though it was eating up the flesh of his body inch by inch. At the point when they heard young Prince's words, the king and queen's faces lost a significant measure of color, especially Mirza Zephyr. He firmly clenched his hands, as outrageous regret and self-fault surfaced all over his face. This quietness went on for quite a while. Even the air appeared to become somewhat heavy, before Mirza at last breathed deeply, and said in a rough voice, "That is the Thunder Ophidian curse." Thunder Ophidian curse? Ezra's eyebrows were firmly merged together, neglecting to understand. Mirza Zephyr's hand shuddered fairly as he disheveled Ezra's hair and said, "It is the ideal time for you to know about these issues. Ezra, you should realize that you are the heir of our ancestral spirit. A 6th-grade beast spirit." Red Scald Wolf Ezra couldn't help and let out a severe giggle. Was there truly a pathetic and hopeless spirit? Even the 8 veins in my body couldn't be found, he pondered. Mirza Zephyr took a seat at his son's side. His voice was low as he spoke. Ezra, the current Bloodfang Kingdom can be viewed just as a little and irrelevant nation. However, what you cannot deny is that 20 years prior, Bloodfang Kingdom was an incredible monarchy. Each nation came to give tribute to us, and our strength was overpowering to all. Shock surfaced on his little face. Among the various empires and kingdoms that specked this unfathomable mainland, Bloodfang Kingdom was truly not noteworthy by any stretch of the imagination. How could he believe that his kingdom once had such gigantic status in past? Are you aware of the Brown Mane Empire? Mirza Zephyr gradually said each word of this name, as if he wanted to carve this name into Ezra's heart. The Brown Mane Empire? Ezra Zephyr nodded. The Brown Mane Empire was one of the high-level empires on this continent. It was a prospering country that contained innumerable spirit marshals, both cultivators and sorcerers. In comparison, Bloodfang was likened to a midget before a Goliath. Mirza Zephyr's eyes turned red at this moment. Profound hatred was revealed within them. Then, at that point, do you realize that 20 years prior, the current royal Lion Men tribe of Brown Mane Empire was just one of the subjects of our Bloodfang Kingdom? A wave of wonder finally showed up in Ezra Zephyr's eyes. The Brown Mane's royal family was once a subject of Bloodfang Empire? Was Bloodfang Empire that incredible 20 years ago? He murmured. Then, how did things turn out this way? Ezra Zephyr really wanted to ask. At the point when Bloodfang Empire was founded hundreds of years ago by our werewolf tribe's ancestors, Our ancestors possessed the spirit of red-skulled wolf and were very powerful. The Lion Men tribe decided to follow us. As we were the only biggest beastmen kingdom at that time, we battled everywhere. We thought they were faithful and dedicated vassals. Then, we set up a duchy in acknowledgement of their administration. And in the Empire's golden age, we gave the chieftain of Lion Men tribe the innate title of Duke Brown Mane because of their numerous contributions to the Empire and their brown-colored mane, permitting them to enjoy an incredible measure of privilege and power. Thus in the following years, the Lion Men tribe protected the Bloodfang Empire's borders, scaring and defending from all enemies, and had numerous contributions during war. Mirza Zephyr's body faintly shook, as veins of blood moved out in his eyes. However, who might have expected that the Lion Men tribe would betray? Only at that time, us werewolves realized that after hiding their power and sticking around for their chance throughout the long term, the Lion Men faction already had built an extraordinary force. And surprisingly, the various other races in the Empire had joined the rebellion, and numerous others took advantage of the chaos that ensued thereafter, while the remaining ones could only stay neutral for fear of their race being wiped out. Thus in the brief period of 5 years, our werewolf tribe was totally crushed, an event that historians later named the downfall of the Golden Empire. Because the history of Beast Continent took a great hit, our werewolf tribe was almost wiped out. The rest of the werewolves could only move towards the south, escaping the jaws of the enemies. We ran and settled at Werewolf Tribe's hereditary land, which is now the current Bloodfang Kingdom's domain. I didn't have the foggiest idea why the Brown Mane tribe revolted. The status they enjoyed in our kingdom was not in any way or form inferior to our imperial tribe. It was just later that a spy acquired some information from somewhere. An ancient prophecy that had been passed down in the main circle of the Lion Men tribe for centuries. A prophecy? Ezra Zephyr was curious. Mirza Zephyr gritted his teeth as he spat out each word. The dragon lion will swallow the red werewolf, and the Lion Men will rise to an unrivaled power. The dragon lion will swallow the red werewolf, and the Lion Men will rise to an unrivaled power? Ezra delicately rehashed these words. However, he neglected to comprehend the importance behind them. I don't understand. Father. Mirza Zephyr's eyes became red. Exceptional sorrow overwhelmed his eyes as he gazed at Ezra Zephyr. In those days, I also didn't comprehend the importance behind these words. Until that day, after the Bloodfang Empire was crushed, I drove what was left of our kin, and persistently withdrew. The Brown Mane family of the Lion Men tribe firmly persuaded us till we reached this present red sky city underneath our feet. However, the Brown Mane family just besieged us and didn't assault. As though they were waiting for something. What were they waiting for? Ezra Zephyr felt a feeling of uneasiness. Mirza Zephyr gazed at his only son. From the demeanor on the previous face, maybe he was crying inside. The combination of such hopelessness and outrage made Ezra Zephyr's heart shake. They were waiting for you to be born. Mirza Zephyr's words made Ezra Zephyr's heart shiver viciously. He had been surprised totally. By the side, Ezra Zephyr's mom, Tanya Inviastus, was at that point covering her mouth. Cries that had been suppressed to her limit. Do you know what it was like when you were born? Mirza Zephyr looked at Ezra Zephyr with red eyes and continued, my son. The second you were born, a mysterious sign showed up in the sky. An unknown energy twirled around you, and a wolf howled that shook the land. It was the indication of the legendary red-scaled wolf spirit. Your 8 gates normally opened upon entering the world, permitting you to skip the gate opening stage and directly break through to the chi brightening stage. This is known as the legendary spirit of our ancestors, the red-scaled wolf spirit, which bestows upon one the potential to reach the more noteworthy cultivation stages. As our red werewolf family's remarkable holy beast spirit, you would have sparkled as brilliantly as the sun and moon, and have the lifespan of the land. Mirza Zephyr's voice was spilling over with emotions, while his whole body savagely shook. One could imagine exactly how emotionally moved he had been when Ezra Zephyr was born. The destiny had not abandoned the red werewolf family, after seeing that the other families of the werewolf tribe were joyed as well. But alas, soon their happiness vanished when they realized that they are still surrounded by enemies. Ezra Zephyr's eyes widened. Obviously, he couldn't completely accept that such a thing had happened when he was born. Then why? His hands shuddered slightly. as he touched his body. Since his 8 gates were normally open, for what reason they were presently absent in his body? Mirza Zephyr's passionate voice went to an unexpected end. The brightness in his eyes appeared to evaporate totally at that moment. There was just bottomless sorrow inside them. As he clarified in a blue way. When you were born, Duke Brownmane's wife also brought forth a child outside the city. Golden lion chi curled around the child's head. He was blessed by the destiny as well. Moreover, according to the information we got, Duke Brownmane's wife had been pregnant for an entire 4 years without giving birth to an offspring. Yet she unexpectedly gave birth to a son that day. I never got why. Yet it at long last turned out to be clear at that point. It is said that those brought into the world on that very year, month, and day has the power to devour one another's spirit. It was clear that the many years of plotting by the Brownmane family was not actually designated at the Bloodfang Kingdom, but at the legendary beast spirit of our werewolf tribe. Mirza Zephyr's mouth opened and closed. A chill quickly spread from the bottoms of his feet to the highest point of his head. It was a scheme. How should there be such a coincidence? Clearly, this plot had been prepared for 100 years and was aimed at their red werewolf family, an excellent scheme that was specifically focused on him. For this, they had even utilized all means to prevent Duke Brownmane's wife from conceiving an offspring for a very long time. It was done in order to wait for Mirza Zephyr. Mirza Zephyr nodded his head and proceeded in a hoarse voice. It was without a doubt a plan. The Brownmane family. No. The entire Lion Man tribe had calmly hung tight in Bloodfang Empire for a few hundred years. They had faced our conflicts for us and acquired our full trust. Nonetheless, who might have expected that their century-huge delay was in support of your appearance? That day, Duke Brownmane entered the city and threatened us with the lives of hundreds of millions of Red Sky City citizens. He wanted to snatch your legendary beast spirit in front of your mom and me at this point. Tears of blood streamed out from Mirza Zephyr's eyes. By the side, Expert Otto likewise wore an expression of sadness, as he proceeded in a soft tone. That day, to secure your excellency, His Highness dueled Duke Brownmane on the Blood Mountain. However, His Majesty was not a match for the last mentioned and received a threatening injury on his face. If that Duke was not afraid that the others would destroy His Highness' legendary beast spirit, then even His Highness would have died at the Duke's hands. To easily snatch His Highness' beast spirit, Duke Brownmane made a vow. The great Brownmane Empire would not take half a step into the Bloodfang Kingdom for the following 50 years. As that terrifying scene flooded out from the depth of her mind, Tanya Inviactus could presently no longer hold her emotions. She tumbled to her knees before Ezra Zephyr, firmly embracing him as she began to wail in an awful way. Ezra, my child. Mother couldn't protect you. The cold-blooded memories from that day were once again bloodily torn open. She clearly recalled how the newly born Ezra Zephyr was utilized as an array and put on the special altar that the Duke had set up. Going along with him on the altar was Duke's newly born son. However, one was being taken from, while the other one was taking. The depriving of spirit was similar to peeling off one's skin. Such torment was incomprehensible. Tanya Inviactus at that time had been sparkling with happiness a few minutes prior. She could just helplessly watch her youngster bear an interminable measure of torment. To such an extent that even his young cries became hoarse. Such hopelessness and despair had made her unconscious. Ugh, because of this unexpected flood of pain, Tanya's face instantly paled. She vomited a mouthful of blood, coloring Ezra Zephyr's hair red. What's going on, Mother? Ezra Zephyr was extraordinarily frightened. He quickly helped her mother wipe the blood at the side of her mouth. Expert Otto rushed over from the side. Delicate energy spread from his staff and filled Tanya Inviactus through her forehead, assisting her with steadying the chi and blood in her body. He took a glance at the pale queen before he murmured towards Ezra Zephyr, Your Majesty, kindly don't blame His Highness and Her Highness for not being able to protect you. In those days, His Highness had given his everything and nearly died in the fight. Concerning Her Highness, after your spirit was taken, she infused her own chi and blood into your body. She gave you blood each year, allowing Your Highness to live this day. However, Her Highness had to pay a colossal cost. Each time she gave her chi and blood, her lifespan would be cut by a few years. In the course of recent years, Her lifespan has as of now been decreased by around 42 years. This is a big hit to her well-being. And according to my knowledge, she currently has only 10 years to live. What? What did you say? Maybe a lightning bolt had struck Ezra Zephyr when he heard this. Veins of blood madly moved out in his eyes. He had never responded so firmly even beforehand when he heard that his spirit had been taken. All things considered, these occasions had happened when he was still an infant. He didn't have a strong attachment or affection towards the red-scaled wolf spirit. Regardless of whether it was seized, he would just feel fairly shocked. Albeit the way that he had been the objective of the Brown-Mane family's century-long plot had made enormous waves of shock ascend in his heart. He was able to suppress them. However, when he discovered that they had forced his beloved mother to drain her life power, a wild killing intent rose inside Ezra Zephyr's heart for the very first time. The wild instinct of an angry wolf. Accordingly, when Ezra Zephyr heard Expert Otto's words, he at this point couldn't control his feelings. The blood in his body hysterically hurried towards his head, making his face turn crimson. That fragile and juvenile face currently showed up rather evil. Lion Men tribe. You dared to hurt my mother and father. You have earned the right to bite the dust. Ezra Zephyr's eyes were crimson. Spilling over the fury and killing intent flooded in his heart, while his whole body shook in fury. Mirza Zephyr carried his wife in his arms and inclined her against a wooden bed. His hair appeared to be somewhat more white and his dominant aura had disappeared as he softly said. It has been said that since the Lionmen's establishments were feeble, a powerful spirit was required for them to set up a strong foundation, allowing their lineage to proceed and amaze everybody with their might. With respect to this, your legendary red-scaled wolf spirit was ideal. Duke Brown-Mane snatched your spirit and gave it to his child. From then on, the Lion Men tribe was secured by the spirit of the golden draconic lion and red-scaled wolf, making their nation prosper. The prospering Great Brown-Mane Empire owes everything to your taken spirit. In the meantime, forcibly removing your legendary wolf beast spirit brought exceptional malice into your body. That duke deliberately fixed a curse in your body, which he got from an ancient ruin. It is told that the curse was made by gods to punish those who has malice in his heart. Duke took that opportunity and implanted that curse in your feeble body. That curse is called Thunderophidian Curse. It ceaselessly reinforces itself by gobbling up your chi and blood until a specific day when it will fully grow. Then, at that point, it will erupt and will totally devour your life force. Meanwhile, your whole body was damaged, making your normally formed 8 gates vanish. Till now, your 8 gates can't seem to show themselves, making your journey of cultivation impossible. Quietness covered the inner castle. The atmosphere was smothering to the point that it made one unable to breathe. Ezra Zephyr looked at Mirza Zephyr, who was seated beside him. The king's dominant face was lifeless and loaded up with powerlessness. Clearly, the occasions from those times had been an immense hit to him. His child's spirit had been taken by his adversary right in front of him, destroying the former's foundation, and he had been totally helpless. It was possible to envision what sort of embarrassment that had been for any father. Ezra Zephyr bit into his lips. He understood his father's personality. In case it was not for securing the hundreds and millions of Red Wolf citizens' lives, almost certainly, he would have decided to go down along with Duke Brown-Mane. So that is the reason my 8 gates have never shown up, making it hard for me to begin cultivation. This duke's way of handling enemies is really vicious. Ezra Zephyr looked at the gradually wriggling heap of dim yellow thunderous light on his chest with outrage in his eyes. Taking his spirit and destroying the foundations of his body had not been sufficient. The duke even planned to kill him by leisurely compelling him to his demise through the Thunderophidian curse. With a full breath, Ezra Zephyr gradually pushed down the flooding rage in his heart. It felt as if his heart had been cut open by a sharp edge when he looked towards the pale face of the dozing Tanya Inviactus by the side. He looked towards his father and asked, "Father, what can be done for mother and her remaining lifespan?" Mirza Zephyr was quiet for some time before he slowly answered. "In this world exists magical fortunes that can expand one's life. If we can get such a thing, we will be able to prolong your mother's life." But, when he arrived at this point, Mirza Zephyr bitterly smiled before saying, "However, such enchanted treasures are very rare. I once utilized all the manpower of Bloodfang Kingdom to look, but couldn't find any of such item. Our incredible kingdom is after all nothing compared to what it was before. Presently, we can just hide here. We scarcely have the ability to guard ourselves. Ezra Zephyr's hand firmly clenched. At that moment, he at last understood the upsides of having power. On the off chance that he had power, he would have the strength to search even the most perilous prohibited grounds for those mysterious fortunes that could broaden one's life expectancy. Nonetheless, the never-showing 8 gates of his body made it with the end goal that he didn't have the ability to protect himself. Ezra Zephyr gritted his teeth and said in a soft tone, "Father, am I really unable to become a cultivator?" His mom had lost her chi and blood for his sake, decreasing her lifespan. As her child, how is it possible that he would calmly sit back and watch? Also, it may have been fine if he didn't know about everything the Brownmane family had done to the Bloodfang Kingdom and himself. However, since he now knew, such a debt would not be written off so easily. In any case, all of this could be made only if he had sufficient power. What's more, in this world, the group of individuals with the greatest power were spirit cultivators and spirit sorcerers. After hearing Ezra Zephyr's words, Mirza Zephyr profoundly grimaced, as if he was pondering something. An extended period of time later, he at long last answered in a delicate voice, "Would you say you are really reluctant to give up?" Ezra Zephyr nodded. Despite the fact that he had his fill of anguish and torment throughout the long term, it had likewise driven him to have a maturity and determination that rose above those at his age. He realized that since the time the Lion Man tribe revolted and took his spirit, it was basically impossible for the two of them to coexist. The fact that the Bloodfang Kingdom was still alive today was all because of the vow that Duke Brownmane had made back then. When the 50 years vow will over, it would not be difficult to imagine how quick the Brownmane Empire would slaughter the Bloodfang Kingdom, preventing any future possible troubles. Consequently, to change such a result, he expected to have enough power. Mirza Zephyr was somewhat delighted by the determination Ezra Zephyr had shown. Subsequent to being quiet for a while, he tapped Ezra's shoulder. "Great. Unwilling to easily surrender. As expected of my child. Since you are willing, Father will naturally do everything he can to help you." After hearing these words from Mirza Zephyr, Ezra's eyes immediately lit up, pleasantly amazed as he said, "Father, is there a way?" The king nodded. Before long, he sighed and said, "You shouldn't celebrate too soon. In light of the fact, even I am unsure if this method will work." "What method is it?" The liveliness of youth was at last seen from Ezra Zephyr's impatient appearance. "The worship altar of our God. This time, you will follow me to our sacred grounds." Mirza Zephyr only chuckled and didn't explain further. Before long, he stopped before saying, "But I have one condition for you." "What condition?" Ezra Zephyr was puzzled and asked in curiosity. Mirza Zephyr harshly said, "Whether or not you can open your gates, you have to start studying on spells. You should realize that if your 8 gates are not opened, sorcery will be the last way you can take. In case you can climb to the pinnacle of sorcery and become a sorcerer, it could be possible to suppress the Thunder Ophidian curse in your body." Cultivators were the most common power in this world. However, it was by all account not the only way. There was another path, one which is broader and deeper than cultivation. The path of sorcery. Ezra Zephyr nodded, as a glad grin framed all over his face. "Rest for now. You still need good rest. Go and sleep well in your chamber. I will take you to the sacred grounds tomorrow," Mirza Zephyr said with a smile. "All right." The youth's voice was overflowing with expectation. Mirza Zephyr laughed as he disheveled Ezra Zephyr's hair. Hence, he carried the unconscious Tanya Inviactus and walked out with expert Otto next to him. Ezra Zephyr looked at Mirza Zephyr's back. The generally dignified back currently gave off a powerless and tired aura that made one sad. He heard from veterans that sometime in the past his father was loaded up with grand yearnings. Nonetheless, savage reality had gradually shaved away those yearnings. All of this was a direct result of that Duke Brownmane. Ezra Zephyr's lips firmly tightened as a chilling look surfaced on his youthful face. "Lion Men Tribe. Duke Brownmane. I will ensure that these debts are repaid one by one in impending futurity." As the sun started its rising, warm morning daylight radiated down on the red sky city. lighting up the spot. Ezra Zephyr had not been able to sleep the entire night. By the time he hurried to the castle entryways, the Imperial Guards were already standing there with utmost respective manner. The 1,000 in number, majestic Imperial Guards wore heavy armors and wielded lances which gleamed with cold light. It was an amazing military force. Mirza Zephyr sat on a fine blazing red pony. He grinned as he watched his son rush over and inquired, "Would you say you are prepared?" Today was the worshipping day of all werewolves. Every werewolf in the kingdom came to the sacred grounds to worship their god. But only the Imperial Red Werewolf family can step on God's altar, as per ancient rules and traditions. Ezra Zephyr strongly nodded his head while hope flooded in his eyes. He realized that whether or not the 8 gates in his body would surface once again, permitting him to start Chi brightening stage, would hinge upon this very day. A gatekeeper drove another blazing red horse over. Blazes consumed at the tip of the pony's tail. However, its head was that of a brutal-looking lion. This animal was known as the Flaming Leo horse and was a Tier 1 magical beast. It had the option to run 1,000 miles without rest. The initially bad-tempered Fire Lion horse had since a long time ago been restrained. Accordingly, when Ezra Zephyr mounted it, it just swung its flaring tail briefly prior to quieting down once more. Ezra Zephyr pulled the pony's reins. The young's crimson-red pupils appeared to burn as he opened his mouth and said, "Father, let's go." Mirza Zephyr laughed and nodded his head, prior to waving his hand. A loud cry was heard and the 1,000 men power quickly transformed into a downpour that overwhelmed Mirza Zephyr and Ezra Zephyr, securing them inside it. Then, they flooded out of the regal royal castle with thundering footsteps, going along the city roads as they rushed towards the city exit. The werewolf's sacred ground was also where the royal Red Wolf family's regal graveyard was located. Albeit the regal graveyard was around 400 miles from Red Werewolf City, given their speed, they arrived at their objective in mere 4 hours. Under an elevated blue pyramid, Mirza Zephyr and Ezra Zephyr got off their ponies while the Imperial Guards spread out and situated themselves at the different entry sections. Indeed, even a bird would be killed in case it approached. "This is the place where the regal graveyard of our royal Red Werewolf family is located." Mirza Zephyr pointed at the majestic blue pyramid before their eyes. Subsequent to being quiet for quite a while, he continued, "Many centuries before, this was the place where our Red Wolf family gathered all werewolf families under its command and started the journey. After a lot of blood and sweat, our ancestors ultimately made Bloodfang Empire, which is now called a lowly kingdom. I had never imagined that our forefathers' endeavors would be beaten back to their original shape at my hands." Ezra Zephyr saw his father's crestfallen face and delicately said, "Father ought not to fault himself. The Brownmane family was plotting and wanton, and nobody might have anticipated that they would plot for hundreds of years. The shortcoming doesn't lie with father." Mirza Zephyr gave a fake chuckle. He didn't talk any further on the theme and just strolled towards the stone steps. "Follow me." Ezra Zephyr nodded and immediately made up for the lost time. The stone steps lead to the top of the pyramid. There were 9,999 steps that ventured straight into the clouds. The two wore serious expressions as they gradually rose. Around 40 minutes later, they, at last, arrived at the top and very last step, where a pitch-black shrine was present. The shrine was ancient and appeared to have washed in the beams of endless moons. Standing from the top, one could see 8 gigantic pillars standing on the ground like a well-versed guard protecting his emperor. They surrounded and secured the blue pyramid underneath Ezra Zephyr's feet like 8 terrifying warriors. A lofty aura appeared to rise precipitously when one watched them. "What an amazing presence," Ezra Zephyr commented. "Seems like their Red Werewolf family's regal graveyard had an unknown powerful origin. No big surprise they were able to build up an empire." Mirza Zephyr grinned and said, "Blessing exists in this world. And this land has someone buried inside who contains a piece of it. The way that our Red Werewolf family was able to rise to power is all thanks to the person called Bjorn Zephyr." Ezra Zephyr silently repeated the name in his mind. Bjorn Zephyr. Mirza Zephyr looked at the focused face of his son and disheveled his hair prior to entering the blue pyramid. As Ezra Zephyr followed, he saw the numerous graves with nameplates on them inside the enormous blue pyramid amid the swinging incense smoke. Graves that belonged to the forefathers and ancestors of the current Red Werewolf family. Under Mirza Zephyr's lead, Ezra Zephyr offered jaw sticks and bowed at each grave. At the very last, Mirza Zephyr's steps stopped before a well-designed and regal-looking grave, located in the deepest part of the Blue Pyramid. This was the grave of Bjorn Zephyr, founding father of the Red Wolf family that had established the Bloodfang Empire. After Mirza Zephyr offered his respects, he stood on his knees, bent his head towards the grave and said, "I am Mirza Zephyr, 51st direct descendant of Bjorn Zephyr." Rumble. A thundering noise was quickly heard and the grave was turned aside. Ezra Zephyr watched in amazement as a thick and pretty arrangement of mystery stone entryways gradually aired out on the wall behind the grave of Bjorn Zephyr. The inside of the stone entryways was loaded up with a profound murkiness and showed up rather strange. Mirza Zephyr's appearance was fairly confounded as he looked at the stone entryways and said, "Whether or not you will be able to open your 8 gates and begin your path of cultivation will be decided after you enter the entryways." After hearing this, Ezra Zephyr's expression became apprehensive as his clenched hands were firmly gripped. Regardless of how mature he was after all still a youngster and was thus incapable to keep his calm maintained, especially when the issue was about the opening of his 8 gates. Mirza Zephyr looked at Ezra Zephyr before pacing past the stone entryways. Behind them was a long stone passage. Lights consumed on the floor of the passage, giving the spot a gloomy lighting. The two didn't talk. Just the weak sound of strides filled the passageway. In the wake of walking for around 20 minutes, Mirza Zephyr's and Ezra Zephyr's footsteps at long last halted. They had arrived at the end of the hall, and a huge old grotto had shown up before their eyes. Toward the end of the grotto stood a stone stage. Ezra Zephyr went directly toward the stone stage. It was then that Ezra Zephyr found that above the stone stage was a statue. A large statue of a black furry wolf, so dominant and ferocious. There were traits of life inside it. With Ezra Zephyr's present comprehension of spirits, he was unfit to perceive the power or mystery of the stone statue. Just ambiguously attempting to imagine its power in his brain made his soul enormously exhausted, leaving him somewhat dazed. Henceforth, he promptly pulled out his gaze. Father Ezra Zephyr looked towards Mirza Zephyr. Could the solution to the Gordian knot of his missing 8 gates be found here? He pondered. Mirza Zephyr's demeanor became more grave as he looked at the ancient statue on the stone stage and said, "My son, this is the god we worship. Its name is Fenrisulfur. Just like the prophecy of the brown mane family, a certain ancient secret has been passed down in our red werewolf family. It says that an unrivaled spirit is concealed in this mysterious statue that can flourish the red werewolf family for uncountable years. The key to this spirit is the blood of our red wolf family's successor. Albeit each successive king has come here trying to get that incredible spirit with his blood, but each and every one of them eventually failed." After saying that, the king looked towards his son Ezra Zephyr before continuing, "That is the reason I have brought you here to check whether you can reveal this great secret. If you are able to get it, not only you will open your 8 gates, but the entire world will bow before you." Ezra Zephyr looked at the mysterious statue of the wolf in awe. He had never expected that such a mysterious secret had been passed down in their royal family. "Do it now, my son. Pour your blood in that bowl over there. Your father has faith in you," Mirza Zephyr said with a smile as he tapped Ezra Zephyr's shoulders. Ezra Zephyr inhaled a deep breath and exhaled after a few moments. His heart was thumping like a drum. However, he was able to summon his boldness and tramped onto the stone stage before seating himself in front of a bowl that had numerous types of imprints on it. He took out a little sharp blade and gritted his teeth as he got it across his wrist. Fresh blood quickly streamed out and fell on the bowl with ancient imprints. In the time of mere few seconds, the imprinted bowl on the stone stage started to glow with the color of blood red. Outside the stone stage, Mirza Zephyr watched this scene with eyes filled with nervousness as he unconsciously clenched his fists tightly as Ezra Zephyr felt the streaming fresh blood. His young and fairly insightful face immediately turned significantly paler. His relentless look was fixed on the confounded glowing bowl, while his heart was thunderously beaten. "This is my chance. I will change everything." Ezra Zephyr firmly gritted his teeth and endured the influxes of wooziness that battered his psyche. Right now, the memory of his mom, Tanya Inviastus, vomiting blood surfaced before his eyes, making a surge of piercing agony spread in his heart. For the well-being of mother's well-being was incredibly impacted and her life expectancy was cut. As far as I might be concerned. My father suffered a deadly wound on his face from Duke Brown Main. My spirit was taken. My body and 8 gates were damaged, and thunder curse gnaws at my life. The Bloodfang Kingdom is a mess inside, while peril lurks outside. We hazard being toppled any time. I need to change all of this. I need to assist the mother with recovering her lost lifespan and the father recovering his goals. I have to guarantee that my people no longer need to worry or be afraid. I need to reclaim all that I have lost. Please help me, oh God. Fenrisol for wail suddenly rang out in Ezra Zephyr's heart. In that brief instant, the werewolf prince's body appeared to shake fiercely, as though an enraged and unresigned dragon roar was reverberating from the deepest recesses of his body. Buzz. It was at this very moment that blinding light detonated from the bloodied bowl. The light merged like a knight and quickly gulped Ezra Zephyr inside. This abrupt development made Mirza Zephyr be paralyzed. He quickly looked towards his son and watched in shock as Ezra Zephyr vanished into thin air. Blinding light overwhelmed the eyes, trailed by an uncouth pulling power. Ezra Zephyr was hit by dizziness as if he had fallen into a whirlpool. Luckily, he was wearing spiritual armor. Ezra Zephyr felt an enormous power surge towards him and his body was flung into the air. Ezra Zephyr's body landed intensely on the ground, making him eat a significant amount of soil all the while. Nonetheless, he was fairly clever, overlooking the pain when he landed. The Wolfman Prince quickly rolled on the ground, distancing himself from where he had initially landed. Simultaneously, the spiritual armor that had been arranged ahead of time on his arms began to glint with a weak shine, prepared to protect from every side. Luckily, the snare he had expected didn't come, and Ezra Zephyr's tensed body slowly relaxed. Only after that, he found the luxury to inspect his surrounding. What just happened? Ezra Zephyr pondered. His eyes widened as he looked around him. The grotto had since a long time ago vanished, and in its place was tranquil timberland. Monster-like giant trees push into the sky, while their thick leaves covered the clouds. Ezra Zephyr slowly moved forward, following the boulevard. He heard the sound of a waterfall. Ezra stopped and looked at the scene. The calm breeze kissed the face of the young prince. Ezra felt strange evilness mixed in the atmosphere, something he never felt or sensed before. What is this place? Ezra Zephyr was totally astounded. He was in the mysterious grotto inside the Blue Pyramid just minutes prior. How had he resulted in this unknown new place in a matter of seconds? Weird. Ezra Zephyr scowled somewhat as he noticed his surrounding once more. Could it be that the so-called great secret of the Red Wolf family was this land? However, there are no signs of any living beings. Ezra Zephyr muttered to himself. As his gaze swept back and forth, his pupils abruptly shrunk while the expression on his face froze as if he had seen a ghost. What Ezra Zephyr saw was a cavern, emitting a negative aura with a stench of blood. Ezra's heart started to pound ferociously. He slowly stepped backwards. It was then when something came out of that evil cavern. Ezra squinted his eyes to see it. From the cavern came out 2 wolf cubs. One was of crimson-red color while the other was cerulean blue. The duo cub signaled Ezra Zephyr. The wolf prince flinched for a moment before trailing them. The young prince and 2 cubs went inside the cavern. It was pitch black. They kept moving until they saw the light at the end of the cavern. Other side of the cavern was a lavish green backwoods that was loaded with life. Every once in a while, savage beasts' roars and cries could be heard somewhere far off. However, every time that occurred, the bluish wolf cub would emit a bark. Albeit the bark was not uproarious. The whole woods appeared to fall quiet, as though they feared this little animal. Ezra Zephyr couldn't resist and look again at the mysterious little beast. These little adorable-looking wolf cubs appeared to be exceptionally uncommon. They progressed thusly for 60 minutes before Ezra Zephyr at long last detected the wolf cub's strides grind to a halt. The duo cub's howl reverberated from the front. Ezra Zephyr skipped a heartbeat as he raised his head and looked through the greenery of the woodland. What he saw was a gigantic midnight black wolf calmly taking a nap. It was as big as a mountain. As it detected Ezra Zephyr's presence, the enormous wolf opened its eyes and gazed at the former. Ezra Zephyr's heart faintly trembled when he saw the crimson eyes of the wolf. Those eyes were loaded up with an indefinable ancientness as if they had experienced innumerable eons. Simultaneously, Ezra Zephyr was able to feel a thick, declining and rotting aura shrouding the wolf. In any case, the second their looks met. Ezra Zephyr additionally felt the impression of being seen through. Maybe every one of his insider secrets had been put in plain view before the Black Wolf's eyes. Haha. A little fellow with no spirit has come. The wolf, colored in dark, gradually withdrew his look as a raspy voice was heard. Be that as it may. The voice was akin to a dragon roar when it fell upon Ezra Zephyr's ears. Boy. You carry the same smell that Bjorn Zephyr had. Are you his grandson? The wolf asked, surprising Ezra. All of a sudden, an image came into Ezra Zephyr's mind. The image of a statue on the stone stage. His father told him that the statue is of the god they worship. Ezra Zephyr sat on his knees and bowed. His forehead hit the ground as he said, I am the 52nd descendant of Bjorn Zephyr. Please accept my greetings. Almighty God Fenrisulfur. The wolf in front of Ezra was none other than the monstrous wolf of Norse. Fenrir. The Black Wolf spoke. It is without a doubt somebody from the Red Werewolf family. Are you a scoundrel as well? Like your ancestor Bjorn Zephyr? The giant wolf eyed Ezra Zephyr, who flinched when he heard that. No. No. Oh, esteemed God, the prince replied in a feared way. Ezra, who was still bowing, wanted to raise his head to ask something, but he couldn't gather enough courage. The wolf looked at him and grinned in a strange manner as it said, I can read your mind. You're not off base. I can indeed help you with taking care of your 8 gates problem. Nonetheless, for what reason would it be a good idea for me to help you? Ezra Zephyr was shocked. After some silence, he appeared to think about what to say before he offered his response. This lowly werewolf doesn't know how to answer that. However, since my ref werewolf family forefathers left behind a blue pyramid that led me to this place, the wolf god ought to have some connection to my red wolf family ancestors. Especially with my great-grandfather Bjorn Zephyr. The giant crimson-eyed dark wolf didn't remark when he heard this. At this point, Ezra Zephyr slowly raised from his bow. He gazed at the wolf and gradually proceeded. Given my present status, I don't have anything that might actually move your mighty existence. However, I can see that your omnipotent self has likely been waiting for me. Right? The sitting wolf at long last stood. Upon the rise of the monstrous wolf, Ezra could only widen his eyes to fill the complete image of the wolf. The wolf was as big as a mountain. A domineering existence. He looked down at the ant-like werewolf. It was difficult to discern whether he was enraged or satisfied as he gazed at Ezra Zephyr and said, Kid, your words are fairly striking. Do you believe that you have anything worth my waiting? In light of the Black Wolf's words, Ezra Zephyr simply smiled as he shook his head. I don't have a clue about the answer to this question. But your omnipotency might perhaps know? The wolf, colored in dark, gazed at Ezra Zephyr with eyes that were loaded up with ferocity. Albeit the previous didn't emit a murderous aura. A pressing feeling had arisen, making the whole timberland deathly silent in front of the Black Wolf. The prudent youth wore a slight grin as he gazed directly toward the wolf with no dread, like a newborn calf. Ezra now believed that the secret of his red werewolf family was not a shot in the dark. There definitely must be a reason as to why he was able to come here. Likewise, he trusted in his instinct. The murderous feelings like into a surging storm went on for quite a while until a helpless smile surfaced on the Black Wolf's terrifying face. He sat back and sighed, looks like I have grown old. Can't even scare a little boy. Ezra Zephyr looked at him with a puzzled face. The wolf looked back, making eye contact. You are my only hope. Ezra Zephyr, the prince of the Bloodfang Empire, was finally startled. His eyes widened as he thought about what he heard. A puny prince of a dying kingdom is the only hope of such an unfathomable being. Ezra thought your omnipotency. I don't know what you mean by that. Ezra asked. Rather respectful. Your ancestor Bjorn Zephyr was my 49th host. Since Ragnarok I have become the spirit of 49 people. Now, I have reached my limit. The 50th time will be my last time. I will cease to exist after that. The great wolf said in a desperate tone. Helplessness dripped from his voice. Ezra Zephyr silently looked at him, bewildered by the coming words. He murmured, Ragnarok? Celestial war. That's what you call Ragnarok in your Zatra realm. It's a gigantic war amongst every superior being, including gods, beasts, demigods, demons, monsters, titans, heroes and others. resulting in the annihilation of them. They could only live in the form of spirits. Like me. The wolf explained as he gazed at the little prince. What can I do for you? My god? Ezra Zephyr asked with sunny eyes. What can you do? The wolf inquired. Whatever you ask me to. But, please save my mother and give me enough time to take my revenge, the werewolf prince claimed. Boldness was shown in his voice. The wolf's eyes twitched. Revenge. He murmured. The wolf hummed and stayed quiet for a long time, making Ezra Zephyr anxious. He finally opened his gigantic mouth and spoke. Explain yourself in 5 words. This is my last chance to exist. Your answer will decide whether or not you are worthy to be my host. Take your time and think well, little one. Ezra Zephyr was left in deep thought with his face facing the ground. As the time passed, the wolf sensed a similar feeling. Something he wished to be present in Ezra Zephyr. The prince finally thought what to say. He raised his head. No sight of fear could be seen on his face. His bloodshot eyes were akin to volcano eruption. Answer me. O descendant of Bjorn Zephyr, the wolf said. Hatred, wrath, vengeance, desperation and sadness. These are the 5 words that explain my current self. The now bold prince replied. At this point, Ezra took a big sigh and cursed himself. What have I done? I should have gave a positive answer. After hearing about our yesteryears. I'm filled with inimical feelings. You passed. A voice was heard by Ezra Zephyr. Huh? Ezra jerked his head above to glance at the gigantic wolf and pondered. Am I hearing things? Fenrir looked at Ezra Zephyr with his nose in the air and said. Aren't you happy? Ezra's eyes widened as he gulped and inquired. Does that mean you will help me? My god? Yes, and stop calling me god. Dumbass. I'm getting sick of acting like 1 inch. The monstrous wolf answered. Ah. That tone and words caught Ezra Zephyr off guard. Then what should I call you? Almighty One? Ezra was a noble born and was well educated about courtesy and manners. Even after the sudden vulgar behavior of that big wolf, he kept his calm and mannered posture. I'm Fenrir, son of Loki. Just call me Fenrir. Nothing more, nothing less. The midnight-furred wolf replied. As you wish. Oh me. I mean Fenrir. Ezra Zephyr shuddered and said. All of a sudden, a thought invaded Ezra's mind and he looked here and there until his sight was locked on his target. Those cubs. What are they, Fenrir? The werewolf prince pointed his finger at 2 wolf cubs and asked. They are my sons. Fenrir answered, but his voice was somewhat dissimilar. Ezra Zephyr felt as his words now had the figments of prolonged heartache and misery. Ezra kept his silence and found it better to not ask further. You scoundrel kid. Stop making me blue and tell me, are you ready? Fenrir broke the silence and his now spoken words contained the same thunderous vigor. Yes. I am ready. Replied Ezra Zephyr. You will be training here for 5 years. During that time you are prohibited to even think of anything about the outside world. The black wolf squinted his eyes and continued. That includes your parents as well. Ezra's heartbeat skipped. The images of his weak and loving mother rushed in and his wounded father who is killing himself with regret each day. Don't be a disheartened dickhead. This god-devouring wolf will ease your worries. Ho ho ho. Fenrir said as he chuckled, forcing Ezra Zephyr to think whether he is the same wolf he saw a few moments ago or not. The wolf emitted dark energy that enveloped his humongous body. In the time span of a millisecond, the size of the midnight wolf shrank. The former mountain-like Fenrir was now 3 meters tall. Follow me, Fenrir said as he went inside the cave. The werewolf prince followed. Ezra Zephyr was surprised to see that there was a cave because the entrance was hidden by the gigantic body of monstrous wolf of Norse. The cave was clean. The stones of the cave were not mere stones, but jade blocks. Only found in lavish castles and royal palaces. This entire forest is as immense as the current Bloodfang Kingdom, Fenrir said as he traipsed. The current Bloodfang Kingdom has 1 capital city, Red Sky City, 3 small cities and a county. Soon the end of the cave was in sight. Glittering scintillation spewed from inside. When they reached the end, Ezra's jaw dropped and his eyes almost popped out. The inside of the cave was massive to the point where Ezra's eyes couldn't cover it, but what astonished the young werewolf was that the entire vicinity was filled with a myriad of treasures. Gold, diamonds, pearls, weapons, pills and whatnot. Even as a prince, he never even dreamt to see such wealth in one place. At their arrival, a silhouette nimbly appeared in front. Ezra Zephyr's instinct kicked in, and he prepared the combat posture even though he never practiced combat. As expected from Bjorn's descendant. "You are quick," Fenrir commented. "Master." The silhouette spoke. Its voice was hoarse. "What is that?" The young prince was horrified by the appearance and voice of this mysterious being. "It's a Jotun. A race of spiritual beings feared by gods." Fenrir described in a few words. The Jotun was 2.8 meters tall. Its back legs were short and arms were long enough to stand on 4 limbs. Its color was purple. The head was long like a horse having sharp long canines. The head was decorated with large antlers akin to that of an elk. "M.S. Bring me syrup of Asclepius and a highest martial spirit." The name of Jotun was M.S. He nodded and vanished. The young prince didn't even blink and M.S. came back, holding a greenish liquid contained in the bottle and a light-emitting cube sizable to a pill. Fenrir gestured to the werewolf prince to receive them and Ezra Zephyr came forward and took them. The midnight wolf turned to leave the cave when M.S. spoke. "Master, is he?" "Yes, M.S. He will be your new master to serve." The Jotun bowed and placed his head on the feet of Ezra Zephyr. "M.S. will serve his new master with every drop of his blood." Ezra was bewildered. The being he was afraid of now bowing to him. Ezra Zephyr felt immense loyalty from Jotun. As a member of royalty, he knew what to do. He touched the shoulders of Jotun with both hands and raised him. "I'm in your care." The Jotun flinched as he looked at Ezra with widened eyes. His mood changed, but right after he turned his head towards the doughty Fenrir and smashed his head on the jade floor. The slave does not dare to commit such blasphemy. Ezra Zephyr couldn't understand the behavior, so he didn't persuade either. After collecting the items, Fenrir moved out without saying a word and Ezra Zephyr followed while M.S. was still there in a bowing position. When they came out, Fenrir looked at Ezra Zephyr in disgust and said, "Don't ever respect your slaves. Especially when it's a Jotun. They only worship strong and that act of yours was a sign of weakness for them. The second they think you are weaker than them is the second they will kill you." Ezra Zephyr flinched. So that was the reason why his mood changed. Ezra pondered as a cold drop of sweat ran across his cheek. Ezra Zephyr calmed himself and pivoted his head down to see the items in his hands. "What are these, Fenrir?" he asked. "These bottles contain syrup of Asclepius. He is a hero and god of healing in Greek. Some even called him a prophet because his powers could see glimpses of the future. He was one of the pioneers of medicine and healing. This syrup made by Asclepius can heal and prolong the vitality in the body. Your parents will have a spring in their steps," Fenrir explained. "And what about this strange cubic pill?" Werewolf Prince inquired again. "This is a gift that no one in the Zator realm can give you," Fenrir said, puzzling the adolescents. "This cube is not a pill. It's a martial container. Inside of it is a spirit of 7th grade. What? A spirit of 7th grade? Ezra Zephyr shuddered. He was surprised to an extent where he almost dropped those goldy items. A 7th grade spirit worth more than the entirety of Bloodfang Kingdom. He mumbled. After consuming it, there will 3 possible outcomes. 2 good and 1 bad. Fenrir said indifferently. "Tell me the bad one first." Ezra replied hurriedly. "Ho, so that the good ones can ease you later. You cheeky bastard. Any which way. The bad one is if the consumer could not handle the spirit manipulation, then he will die miserably on the spot." After hearing that, the werewolf prince unconsciously gulped. His color gradually paled to a visible degree. "Now the good possibilities," Fenrir spoke, attracting the attention of the perturbed adolescent prince. "The first good possibility is if he succeeds in manipulating his spirit, he will become the host of new spirit with a grade of 7. The face of Ezra showed the sign of happiness. His tensed features waned drastically. Fenrir saw that and continued. "The last possibility can be considered as blessing amongst blessings. At the start of manipulation, the present spirit and the high-grade spirit will fight for superiority. This fight will cause chaotic pain in the host's body. During that time, his chi or mana will become unstable. If he couldn't bear it, then he will die, and if he can bear it, then he will get the 7th grade spirit. But between both, there exists third possibility. The rarest one. If the host uses his consciousness and tampers the fight, then there will be a chance of spirit merge. If both spirits merge instead of fighting to death, then the new spirit will be born. An 8th grade spirit." Ezra Zephyr quietly looked at Fenrir. There was not a single reaction from him. This puzzled Fenrir as well. Is he not impressed? He was clearly impressed by a mere 7th grade, then why he is like a lifeless doll after hearing about 8th grade spirit. He couldn't peek in Ezra Zephyr's feelings this time. While Fenrir was wondering about that reaction, the reality was the opposite. With all the otherworldly information, Ezra Zephyr's mind went blank. His brain stopped processing for a moment as if it wanted to restart the whole chatter from start. He never even thought of possessing a 7th grade spirit in his wildest dreams, let alone an 8th grade spirit. After getting a hold of himself, Ezra Zephyr bowed in respect and said, "Thank you, Fenrir. I will use this spirit to get my revenge. With this, I can reach unseen heights." Tisk. "This is not for you, dumbass. It's for your father," Fenrir replied with disgust on his face. "Really? Then what will be my spirit? Is it a 7th grade spirit or 8th grade?" The young werewolf prince asked as his eyes glittered in excitement. "The spirit chosen for you cannot be compared with these shitty spirits," Fenrir boldly said. Pride emitted from his vigorous voice. Ezra Zephyr this time was less surprised and happier. Deep inside he was expecting the same type of answer. "I don't know if I can ever repay your kindness, Fenrir," he said. "I hate that word, Ezra. If you want to repay me, then kill your innocent self and be reborn as evil. Only then the world will truly fear you." The midnight monstrous wolf of Norse said. Every word of his was suffused with gravity. "You can go now. Give these materials to your parents and come back after bidding farewell. You won't be able to see them for 5 years." The wolf said, "Yes. I will take my leave now." The prince replied, "Time is crucial, Ezra. Return as fast as you can." The wolf warned, and the prince nodded. With that, the same blinding light devoured Ezra, and he was pulled into a void when he opened his eyes. He was in the same place in front of the huge wolf statue. The first thing he saw was a person crying desperately. His sorrowful cries could tear the sky apart. "Father," Ezra mumbled. Mirza Zephyr felt a presence. The sobbing king of Bloodfang Kingdom gradually raised his head. "Ezra, you came back." He applied force on his wobbly knees and stood up. For Ezra Zephyr, it was the very first time he saw his role model crying so helplessly over something. The now stopped cries of his father echoed in his mind. His heartbeat paced as tribal drums before a sacrifice. He darted up to his father and hugged him. His eyes were filled with tears as if they were aching to rain. But the prince controlled his emotions admirably. "Oh, my child. I thought I lost you once again," Mirza said as he firmly hugged his son. Ezra Zephyr calmed himself. He gently broke the hug and stated his father. For wet eyes met each other. King's eyes were filled with helplessness and regret, while the peepers of the prince were engulfed with fury and vengeance. "Our ancestors didn't lie, father. There is a blessing here. I met our god." Ezra said. "The peace. Our god?" asked Mirza. The werewolf prince looked at the statue of the wolf behind. The king followed the gaze, and his eyes widened. "Ezra, you are not joking. Did you meet our god Fenrisulfur?" "Yes, father. Though he is not a god but a monstrous beast," Ezra corrected. "Ezra, behave yourself. You are the red werewolf prince and heir of the throne. It's very inappropriate for you to say this. We are what we are because of our ancestors and god Fenrisulfur. Apologize for this blasphemy." Werewolf King chided his seed. But father, he was the one who told me not to call him a god," Ezra replied as he scratched his head innocently. "So what if he said hymns?" "Wait, what?" The puzzled king didn't know what to say anymore. As if someone took out the words he was about to spit from his mouth, Ezra giggled at his father as he turned his sight to the wolf statue. "Fenrir must be laughing at us now after a period of the emotional gala." Mirza Zephyr asked his son. "What happened inside, son? Tell me in detail without leaving a single nominal thing." Ezra told everything to his father. Posterior to that, Mirza Zephyr found himself bewildered by what he heard. A wealth more than anyone has in the continent and a 7th grade spirit. How am I supposed to believe that? The king of werewolves murmured. Ezra forwarded his hands, gripping the godly items firmly. The king didn't pay any attention to his hands prior to that. He was overwhelmed by emotions when he saw his son. Seeing the items mentioned with his eyes, the king's heart skipped a beat. "Father, let's go. I have no time to spare. We need to heal you and mother with this syrup." Mirza gave out a big sigh as if he had trouble inhaling before. Sorry. My son. I showed my worst self. The prince smiled as he gently touched his father's beard and said, It's all okay, father. I can relate as well, but now the tables have turned. We will pay them back 1,000 folds. Haha, yes. You are right. This will be the last time I act helplessly. Mirza said and sent a decisive glance at the items. Let me take them first. He said and continued. Even though I don't doubt what you said, but I am a father and husband and have my own worries. I want to use them first to see if there are any side effects. Especially the syrup you mentioned. What was its name again? Syrup of Asclepius. Yes. Syrup of Asclepius. I have injuries on my cheek core, prohibiting me to cultivate further. That's why I haven't broken through a single stage since then. There are 6 stages of cultivation in the Zator realm. 8 gates opening. Chi brightening stage. Core formation stage. Foundation establishment stage. Nascent soul stage, and lastly spiritual transformation stage. There are rumors that once reaching the peak of the spiritual transformation stage, one stops the process of aging and becomes immortal and can use the physical powers of spirit. Mirza Zephyr was still stuck at the first level of core formation stage. As you wish, father. Ezra said as he gave the syrup of Asclepius to his father. Mirza gazed at the syrup as a child stares at its most desired toy. How should I consume it? He questioned. Drink only 1 drop. That's what I was told, only 1 drop. What kind of deity would Asclepius be to make something like that? He pondered. Mirza opened the bottle. The fragrance emitting from the bottle was more than enough to make him believe this was a godly item. Only by sniffing it, he felt all his tiredness and worries washed away as if he never cried in his entire life. The king licked his dried lips before opening them and drizzled a drop carefully, then gulped it. Both son and father waited bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Soon after, a change started to stir, and the skin of Mirza Zephyr started glowing like a firefly in dark. My core. It's healing. I can feel it. The king exhaled and continued. The power is erupting, but my core is at ease. It feels like I can control all the power of the world. A wave of chi was released from Mirza's body, making Ezra Zephyr take 2 steps back. The wave could be seen outside of Regal Graveyard. The head of Imperial Guards, a silver-haired man with a face full of nasty scars, panicked. What was that? Protect the majesties. He shouted. Commander. It's not an attack. A young dignified man replied. Hearing that, the head guard looked at the Regal Graveyard once again. Almighty God Fenris Sulfur. Please protect them. He prayed desperately. As he started chanting the same line, another wave of chi emerged from within. Someone broke through. The head guard mumbled. Ezra was almost flying by the powerful waves, as he was not but a mere werewolf without an ounce of cultivation. Soon after the wave stopped, Ezra, who was tossed here and there, finally stood firmly and looked for his father. Ezra gasped with his eyes wide. The man in front of him was no longer the same he knew. All the wrinkles on Mirza's face vanished. There were a few tufts of white hair, but now the entire head was jet decorated with thick jet black hair. The muscles became more stacked and brawny. The posture made Mirza look taller. The only things which didn't change were clothes and features. Father. Is that really you? Ezra said as his heart was battling against various emotions. Happiness. Curiosity. Excitement. Haha, yes. Ezra, my son. This syrup is heavenly. Will you just look at me? I feel like I am in my 20s. Mirza answered joyfully as he chuckled. Ezra blinked in astonishment. You also broke through? Yes. After the duel I lost against Duke Brownmane, I suffered core injuries and got stuck at the first level of core formation stage for 15 years. But the single drop of this syrup not only healed the injuries but pushed my cultivation by 2 levels. I'm now at 3rd level of core formation stage. The king said. His face was worth watching at that moment. He paused for a moment and asked the young werewolf prince. Ezra. Where is the 7th grade spirit? Here it is, father. Ezra jerked forward and gave the spirit cube to his father. His face was akin to a naive kif, even though it was his father who got healed, but if one judges by the expressions alone, Ezra would win the position of happier person among the two. Mirza saw that as well. He stepped forward and disheveled the hair of his son Ezra. You are my pride. For you, I can sacrifice thousands of syrups like that. His eyes watered as completed the sentence. Don't ruin the mood, father. Hurry up and consume the spirit. Haha. I can't wait to surprise the Imperial Guards outside. Uncle Pole's face would be worth watching. The king laughed, haha. Indeed, I second that. Now, let's begin the second round. Shall we? Mirza Zephyr stretched his body. Cracking sounds pleased his ears. He extended his hand and Ezra gave him the spirit cube. Father, there are some things I want to tell you regarding the spirit cube. Ezra hurriedly said as he handed over the cube. What is it, son? The king inquired. This cube has 3 possibilities. It can kill you. It can gift you the 7th grade spirit, or if your willpower is strong enough, you might get awarded an 8th grade spirit. All will be at the mercy of your tenacity. The more you endure, the higher your reward will be. That's all I have to inform, father. Think wisely before you start. For a child like me, a weak and alive father is way better than a strong but dead father. The young werewolf prince sarcastically guided his father. Haha. You only went inside for a few moments and already learnt the ways of talking. Haha, very impressed. The king chuckled and said. Alright then, so. Wait. Did you just say 8th grade? Mirza Zephyr was astounded. His legs staggered. You heard it right, father. Ezra Zephyr said each word loudly, making sure that Mirza Zephyr overcome the surprise. The werewolf king gulped. His legs gave up and his arse smashed on the marble floor like a falling apple. As soon as he hit the ground, the sweat dribbled like a waterfall. His breaths were heavy as he buzzed something to himself. The young lad saw his father and asked in worry, Father, what happened? Are you all right? Ezra, do you even know how much an 8th grade spirit is worth? The king asked. His voice was trembling, and his face was terrified. The prince thought for a second and answered, perhaps the same value as that of a medium-level sect? A medium-level sect? That's the worth of a 6th grade spirit. Why else the lion tribe would have planned for centuries to steal our blessing? Let me give you an example. There are only 6 people I know who possess 7th grade spirits. They are the current sect leaders of upper-level sects. A disciple with a 7th grade spirit can cause an all-out war amongst the sects. What we are talking about here is not a 7th grade spirit but an 8th grade spirit, said Mirza Zephyr, his face gravely grim. Now that Ezra understood the value of items, instead of fearing he smiled, puzzling his father. Now he knows how lucky he was to be chosen by Fenrir. He took a glance at his father and spoke in a bold tone. This is not how a king of a nation should act, father. The fate has given you a chance. Either clench it and quake the world or wait for the Lion Man tribe to kill us after the specific time. The werewolf king was indifferent. Maybe the shock of 8th grade was too big for him. Inside his head, he was battling wars against apocalyptic thoughts. What Mirza Zephyr feared was not Brownmane Empire but the top sects. They won't stand still once they receive the news of someone possessing an 8th grade spirit. No one could tell whether they would view it as a blessing or consider it a curse. Ezra Zephyr, after seeing the battered will of his father, came up with an idea. All right, father. Let's get back home once I return these things to Fenrir, said Ezra Zephyr. Why are you returning it? Your mother isn't healed yet. The king panicked. His love for his wife was visible. What's the point of living when we will die eventually to our enemies? While you, who are supposed to protect us, have already given up. Let them humiliate mother like they did before. Ezra Zephyr took a deep breath, which sounded more like a sob. Tears assembled at the banks of his eyes as he said, I wish I had died 15 years ago. Ezra. A wave of chi blew. Veins pulped on Mirza's forehead as if someone had torn open an old unhealed wound. Bingo. Plan successful. The werewolf prince said to himself. I will protect my people from everyone. Be it Brownman Empire or sex. I will fight till my last breath. I cannot bear to see something like I witnessed 15 years ago. The king replied and continued. Stand behind the wolf statue. There will be chi outburst, I believe. It could be dangerous for you. Ezra Zephyr nodded and went to hide. The king gazed at the cube like a hungry puppy staring at its bowl. He opened his mouth and swallowed it in one go and sit on the floor with a perfect posture. He closed his eyes and out of the blue, a loud shriek was heard. Mirza Zephyr flinched, but he understood that the bellow came from within. His body shook crazily. It was the scream from the spirit the cube held. Mirza Zephyr took a look at his inside. He saw a majestic long griffin. Its entire body was engulfed in flames. The peak of it was akin to a dazzling red-hot iron. His pair of flattering blaze wings were testimony to the fact that it's a magnificent spirit. That's the spirit from the cube. Mirza pondered. In front of the griffin was a wolf, a red-colored wolf with black dotted skin. The only thing unusual was its long ears. It fearlessly growled at the griffin. He was unhappy about the interference of someone else in its territory. Mirza was witnessing everything. As he blinked, the two jumped at each other. The battle of dominance began within Mirza Zephyr. His body shook like a fallen leaf in spring. The pain was so immense that Mirza Zephyr almost passed out. The battle was about to end. It was a one-sided fight. The wolf only needed the final touch before it ceased to exist. The griffin raised his foot to stomp the wounded wolf. Stop it. Now. A loud yell yelped by Mirza Zephyr momentarily halted the battle. Occasionally missing content. Please report errors in time. The griffin gave a tentative glance over his shoulder and saw its new host. Don't fight and live in harmony, Mirza said nervously prior to investigating every Lilliputian part of griffin, paying no heed to its new host. The griffin stomped the knocked wolf, securing its dominance. The king vomited blood and fell nonchalantly. Father. The son jolted at his father and nuzzled him in the embrace. Father, answer me. Worried son kept calling his beloved father, but the body was not answering with any response. Meanwhile, Mirza Zephyr's consciousness inside his core was throbbing in pain. Damn it. This pain is unbearable. A reddish aura started to belch out of the wolf's mouth, as its existence inclined vividly. What should I do? At this rate, my heavy-eared wolf spirit will die. But Mirza Zephyr pondered and paused for a second before his thoughts bolted in again. But then this 7th-grade griffin will be my new spirit. It's a blessing, the werewolf king said to himself. It was the moment the griffin raised its legs again to smash the wolf once and for all. Mirza silently did his work as an audience, but as soon as his glander fell on the fallen wolf spirit, his eyes began to redden. The exhausted look of heavy-eared wolf fissured an old wound once again. The memories of that hapless time when his son Ezra came into the world assaulted like a vanguard cavalry. It was this heavy-eared wolf spirit he had when he battled Duke Brownmane. The heavy-eared wolf was severely injured back at that time as well. An eruption of negative motions arose inside as he clamored in anger. I said stop. This time, Mirza Zephyr was behaving like a valorous valiant warrior in war, ready to fulfill his vow of eradicating enemies. The willpower was unseen. There was a bright light in his eyes. The griffin came in front of the unflinching werewolf king and bowed. I won't repeat it third time. So listen carefully. Don't fight and live in harmony. The griffin closed his eyes and lowered its posture as if it was saying, as you wish. Master. Right after it, the body of griffin started to glow. Mirza winced at the sudden glow and took a few steps back. After looking at the wolf, he found that both of the spirits were glowing. Griffin emitted a golden aura while the wolf spewed reddish one. They are merging. I never thought it would be this easy. His consciousness was suddenly sucked back to the outer world. He opened his eyes and saw his son shedding tears. The king was about to touch Ezra's hair when a thrilling pain agonized him. A sky-breaking painful cry. More than enough to send chills down the spines of Imperial guards. The silver-haired head guard didn't wait for a second and rushed. It was prohibited for him to step into the regal graveyard. But that dire cry of king forced him to do so. He went inside while the rest of the Imperial guards eagerly waited for his signal. The man rushed inside the cave, following the strange surges of chi waves. He reached the end of the cave and saw the prince holding his father firmly while the king was trembling in agony. Uncle Pol. Come and help father. The silver-haired man with a face full of scars was Polad Whitefang, an old friend and companion of King Mirza Zephyr, vowing to protect the noble blood as head of Imperial guards. He was also a werewolf, but from a different family. Your Majesty. What is happening? How did my liege become like this? He asked as he dashed and held the king. It's a long story, Uncle Pol. For now, only father can save himself. All we need to do is to hold him so he doesn't damage his body. The blood oozed from the nose of King as he murmured something. Ezra Zephyr caught it and bent his neck to listen. It's painful. I cannot bear it. I want to sleep. The words he heard leapt at his heart. No, father. You are not allowed to sleep. Think of me. Think of mother. Our prayers are finally answered by Fenrir. We will rebuild the Bloodfang Kingdom. Hang in there, father. The young werewolf prince anxiously cried each word. On the other hand, Mirza's body started to become numb. The physical and spiritual pain was way too much for him. A normal person would have died twice from such torment. Mirza Zephyr closed his eyes. The first picture that came to his mind was of Tanya in Viastus. His pretty wife. I am sorry, my love. I can no longer be with you. You have raised an amazing son. The second one to come was the handsome prince. Mirza chuckled, haha. Ezra, it's time for me to go. You are too mature for your age. Leave the Bloodfang Kingdom with your mother and live somewhere peaceful, hidden from the eyes of enemies. I bid you farewell. The king's pulse started to decrease gradually. His consciousness was almost faded when he heard something. Huh? What was that? Mirza Zephyr opened his eyes. It was pitch black everywhere. Ha ha ha. A peal of laughter came from somewhere. Who are you? Come forward. The king warned. Ha ha ha. The same mocking laughter reverberated. I'm asking once again. Who are you? The king inquired indifferently. Poor Mirza Zephyr. Still as pathetic and weak as before. The unknown man slurred. Shut up and show me yourself. Are you too afraid to face me? The king jibed back. Me afraid of you? This could be considered as the joke of the century. The man hidden in dark said. Mirza Zephyr gritted his teeth in anger. Then come forward and face me. Mirza heard the footsteps slowly coming towards him. I'll show myself if you give me an honest answer to my question. The man's feet were visible, but still Mirza was unable to identify them. There was a strange burning feeling he felt, but he couldn't gather the pieces. After all, what he was seeing was not real, but a subconscious dream. What answer you seek? Asked Mirza. The man came outside. His face was open to the light. Mirza Zephyr's eyes widened as that man spoke again. Is that scar on your face still hurt? Haha. I draw it with a lot of exertion. My old friend. Duke Bruce Brownmane. The werewolf king muttered as horror engulfed his face. The body of the werewolf king shook again. A little mild this time, giving the worrying duo hope. Father. Hang in there. Ezra Zephyr shouted. Mirza Zephyr, who was hallucinating Brownmane, was shocked inside his subconsciousness. Bruce. He stuttered. Fear? Surprise? Anger? Even Mirza himself didn't know for what reason he stuttered. Look at your messy self. I thought it would be joyful when I'll kill you the day our vow ends. But you are dying now by yourself. I'm saddened to no limit. Werewolf King's arch-enemy conveyed his words. Filled with arrogance. The blood of the werewolf king boiled as he uttered, you traitorous bastard. I will kill you. He sprang at the Lion Man King. The king of Brownmane Empire stood sedately with a wicked smile. As Mirza closed the distance, Bruce emitted off an incredible amount of chi, blowing him back to where he was before. Mirza Zephyr gritted and ate the fact that he was powerless. Bruce took out the spear from a pouch hanging on his waist. The king's eyes widened. The nightmares of that spear recalled at once. It was this spear that gave the gruesome wound on Mirza's face, whose scar still haunted him at night. Bruce Brownmane threw the spear at Mirza Zephyr. The spear pierced the air and drilled a hole in the werewolf king's chest. With a dainty thud, Mirza's knees hit the ground. There was no pain. But still, he felt his life force being drained away. The Lion Man King steps forward as he said, that's the right way, Mirza. Die calmly. I will make sure to drill the exact hole in your cripple son and sexy wife. Ha ha ha. Mirza's eyes gradually closed as he heard the steps and cackle fading away until he could no longer hear them. Ezra. Tanya. The exhausted king mumbled to himself, stand Mirza. You are the king of Bloodfang Kingdom. No. You are king of Bloodfang Empire. Stand. A huge wave of chi was released, and his eyes turned crimson as he stood on his wobbly legs. Ah. With a loud yell, the king came back to his consciousness. Father. My liege. Ezra and Polad shouted. Respectively. The pain once again assaulted Mirza. Step back you two. He said to the duo and started to morph, from his eyes becoming crimson. His facial bones elongated, followed by the entire body transformation. His Majesty is morphing. Let's take a few steps back, Prince Ezra. Polad understood the changes and warned. Uncle Pol. Will father lose his mind as well? Like I read about werewolves in books and tales? the young prince asked. It was his first time seeing a morph. He spent his entire life inside the royal castle because of his fragile body and the curse of God. Mirza Zephyr's hands enlarged slightly, and sharp claws protruded. His skin was torn as thick rough hairs emerged from his body and a bushy tail wiggled wildly. Mirza Zephyr howled as his transformation was attained. The old king was nowhere to be seen. He was 6 feet 2 inches tall, but after the morph, his height gained an additional foot. His body was more stacked than it was before, with black claws and a pitch-red body with crimson eyes. Now Urza understood why his family was called red werewolves. Looking at his face, there was still one thing that was similar to his normal form. The scar on his face. Even the morph couldn't hide it. Uncle Pol, answer me. Will father lose his mind? The prince asked again. No. As far as I know, he will have his sanity, but we still need to be cautious. Polad Whitefang replied. The bulky werewolf gave a tentative glance to his son and sat down in a meditation position. Father? Ezra said under his breath. Do not disturb his majesty. Young prince. My liege is in perfect form. His won't go wild. My hunch was right. He is meditating. The Imperial Guard commander verbalized. But I read werewolves go on a rampage after they morph. Even father said it's true. Ezra Zephyr asked in a puzzle. It's indeed true. Even I only remember vividly after my morph. But this fact won't apply to the red werewolf family. Polad Whitefang glanced at Ezra and said. Your Majesty, do you know why red werewolf family managed to gather all the werewolf families under their banner? The red werewolf family is just slightly more powerful than our Whitefang family in morph form. But still red werewolf family kept the throne for decades without any other werewolf family's revolt. Even when that betrayer Bruce Brownmane offered other werewolves the throne of Bloodfang Empire, none flinched at his bid. All the werewolves were ready to fight till death for the sake of the imperial family. The red werewolf family. Ezra Zephyr blinked his eyes in astonishment after Mirza explained the past to Ezra. The young werewolf prince did all the research regarding Brownmane Empire at night. That was one of the reasons he couldn't sleep that night. During his research through history books, he found out that it was a cruel period of Bloodfang Kingdom, where even the closest vassals of his father left him for posh offers of Brownmane family. The reason for our utmost loyalty is that we have acknowledged red werewolf family as god vassal, said Imperial Guard commander. God vassal? He repeated, showing an urge for the explanation. Polad continued out of entire werewolf tribe here or in the entire continent. It is the red werewolf family who can morph without losing their sanity. After morphing, we werewolves turn into bloodthirsty beasts. Aggressive, lustful and dangerous. Except for the red werewolf family. They remain calm as a millpound. In the eyes of werewolves, this is a god-gifted ability. This is the second time His Majesty has morphed. The first was when he dueled with Lion Man and got a shattering defeat with the lifelong scar and wound. Ezra Zephyr gave a decisive glance at his father, who was growling in pain amid meditating. The continuous tedious growls of the werewolf king confirmed that he was battling against an immeasurable pain. If not for his werewolf form, he would have collapsed by now. Ezra read in books that the morph form of werewolves increases their attributes by a wide margin. The triad in the cave became a little quiet. One meditating and other scrutinizing. The grunts of Mirza Zephyr dimmed. An abrupt burst of chi wave was released by the king, knocking both Ezra and Polad away. The king opened his eyes and stood on his feet gradually. His action was filled with nobility and excellency. Ezra's jaw dropped and Polad's eyes widened. The catalyst of their expression was not the standing style of Mirza Zephyr but the strange golden fire dancing around his body, waiting for a small signal to burn everything to crisp. Father, you succeed? Ezra asked the question he knew the answer of. Perhaps he wanted to hear it from his father's mouth. Yes. I succeed. The king replied, his voice being hoarse and terrifying. Polad's knees shook violently as if he had seen a ghost. My king. My king. He talked in that form. Oh God. I must inform everyone. He murmured before gated out in hustle. Ezra Zephyr was disconcerting. Is speaking in morph form too big of a deal? He assumed by looking at the astounded Imperial Guard's head and pondered if he had read anything pertaining to that. Meanwhile, the king didn't stop the commander. His eyes were glued on his son. His body began to change again. His protruded bones caved in. His claws shrank back and his torn skin mended itself. As the usual vigorous king was back, Ezra could no longer wait and jolted towards him. The former smiled and answered the hug with a tight embrace. Tears slithered down his cheeks, followed by soft sobbings. The brave and heroic Mirza Zephyr was crying. The worried son tried to look at his father's face, but he didn't have the strength to break his embrace. SSHHH. Don't go anywhere, Ezra. Let me hug you and cry for a while. Just let me cry on your shoulder this once, my son. Mirza Zephyr said as his sobbing started to get louder. Ezra Zephyr had never seen his father like that. Thus, the son hugged back again and both cried. After a quiet while, Mirza opened his arms, gently separating his son a little and glanced at his face. Ezra did the same. Both of them had red eyes. Father, what happened? You said. You succeed, then why were you crying? Is there anything wrong? Ezra Zephyr asked eagerly. No, Ezra. Mirza Zephyr said and sighed. After a few deep breaths, he spoke again. All this time I cried at my misfortune in empty rooms. I am the symbol of Bloodfang Kingdom's strength as well as our family's. I was not allowed to show my weak side to anyone. But today, it felt like I have found someone on whom I can rely and share my burden, and that person is you. My beloved son. You are the lucky charm of our nation and family. That's why I cried so heartedly, cleansing all the pain and regret inside my heart. From this moment onwards, there will only be tears of happiness in my eyes. The words of Mirza Zephyr shook Ezra's soul. He knew the nature of his father. He never accepted any aid from neighboring countries even in dire situations. Just because he didn't want his nation to be in any sort of debt. His mind was more like a doughty freedom fighter than that of a strategist king. He sent aid numerous times to different nations, but never received a single one even after Brownmane Empire drove us into the corner. Such a man was saying that he can rely on Ezra Zephyr. The werewolf prince bit his lip, forcing himself to not cry. Father, what about your martial spirit? Ezra asked and changed the topic. Haha. About that. Let's go outside and see in front of our imperial guards. The king chuckled and said. He clenched his son's hand and moved towards the outside. The news of King Mirza speaking in morph form already spread to entire imperial guards. The moment they saw Mirza Zephyr and Ezra Zephyr, the air vibrated and the earth quacked with their slogans. All hail God vassals, all hail royal family, all hail King Mirza, all hail Prince Ezra. Their zeal, love and loyalty were genuine. The king raised his hand. All the slogans stopped at once. The king started to emit out chi, a golden majestic fire. Polid Whitefang's eyes widened. The king break through again? He said. The fellow dignified youth with Polid looked in astonishment. Did his majesty cure his wound? Father? The young man asked. Polid gave a tentative glare at him over his shoulder and retorted. I am Imperial Guard Commander and you are Vice Commander. Forget that again and I will cut your throat. I am sorry, Commander. The youth apologized right after. Polid grunted lightly and answered yes. His Majesty's wounds are healed and the Crown Prince has become the dragon. Hearing that, the face of youth and nearby soldiers decorated with big and wide smiles. Son, do you know of what race our Imperial Guards are? Mirza Zephyr asked Ezra Zephyr. I heard from Mother that they consist of mixed races. Am I correct, Father? That's what we wanted the world to know. In reality, each one of the soldiers is a werewolf. Not a single one is of an outside race. Because almost all commanders and Imperial Guards betrayed us during the revolt of the Brownmane tribe. Except our blood and kin werewolves. That's why I don't trust anyone else now. Ezra Zephyr was lost in words. The love and respect for fellow werewolves were soaring. Now let me flex with my new spirit. Ha ha ha. The king laughed as his spirit rose from his body. It was a wolf, a golden wolf engulfed in golden flames. His long ears were made of fire, flapping in the air. The wolf had 6 fire-molded wings. The first pair of wings were larger than second pair. Likewise, the second pair was bigger than third. 8 golden fire orbs were rotating vertically behind the king's back, each orb representing a grade of spirit. The eyes of everyone present were wide open. Not excluding Ezra Zephyr. It's an 8th grade spirit. How is this possible? Oh my God. Our king has created a legend. Different people gave a different opinion. Regardless of all, everyone was shocked. Some couldn't believe it and slapped themselves several times. As you all witnessed, this is my new 8th grade spirit. Its name is Werewolf. My precious werewolves. Fate has turned the tables. Our time has come to take back what is rightfully ours from those lion men bastards. All Imperial Guard's eyes were glued on Mirza Zephyr. His words ignited a fire inside their heart. A fire which was died for many years. The king of werewolves looked at their subjects and spoke again. Will you follow me to take our dignity back? Will you follow me to exact our revenge? Will you follow me even if the path is filled with pain, blood and death? Will you follow me to fight the enemies in the pit of hell? Will you follow me to slay those lion men bastards who have forgotten their place? Tell me, werewolves. Will you follow me? The Emperor of Bloodfang Empire. Mirza Zephyr? The last line of the king reverberated like thunder in a rainstorm. The sudden surge of emotions gave werewolves goosebumps, and they all answered in unity. Yes. We will follow you. Your Majesty. The powerful slogans of unity were akin to a volcano eruption. Emotions surged inside everyone present. I want you to look at them very carefully, son. These are your real people. These are the people for whom we shall fight, because they never left us alone on our fate. Mirza Zephyr said to his offspring. Ezra on the other side couldn't find words to reply. Maybe he was too young to experience such a thing, or maybe his emotions were surging. But unfortunately, our race's power is declining with passing time. The king continued. Declining? But why, father? The young werewolf asked in concern. The grade of the spirit of a person is highly dependent on the spirits of his parents. If parents have grade 5 spirit, then it is nearly impossible for the child to be born with a grade 6 spirit. The child will only be blessed by a grade 5 spirit if both of his parents have the same grade of spirits. And the average of werewolf spirits is of grade 2. But father, how come I was born with a grade 6 spirit when you and mother had lower grade spirits? You were an exception. A blessing gifted to our race by a prophecy. King said. He took a deep breath and spoke again. If only you had some more spirit cubes for our race. Especially for our Imperial Guards. At this point, Ezra thought of monstrous wolf. I have to ask Fenrir. Maybe he has some more. He pondered. You greedy kid. I can hear your thoughts. A voice rang in Ezra's head. Fenrir. He cried in surprise. Hearing the name, the king asked. What happened to God Fenrisulfur? Nothing, father. Did you hear something? No. Is everything all right, son? Yes, father. The prince smiled and knocked the topic away. He cannot hear me, fool. Only those I allow in this pyramid can hear me. The Fenrir answered. But how are you talking? When you are not here? The dazed werewolf questioned. It's telepathy. You don't even know about such a common thing? How pathetic of you. The wolf mocked, ignoring the sarcasm. Ezra said through his thoughts, Fenrir. If you can hear my thoughts, then you ought to know what I was thinking about as well. I know. Let me give you a brief number. I have 5 more 7-grade spirit cubes, which I cannot waste on these pitiful werewolves. Aside from that, there are 98 grade 6 cubes, 419 grade 5 cubes, and 2000 grade 4 cubes. You can use them as you want. They are worthless to me. But I will suggest you keep the grade 6 cubes. Hearing that, Ezra Zephyr exploded in happiness. His mouth widened as he smiled like a moron. You are awesome, Fenrir. But I can only use one spirit, then what's the point of keeping the rest? I cannot use them anyway. So why not use it on these loyal people? Shut your blabbering mouth and do as I say, or you won't even get a single cube. Fenrir retorted. Sorry. I understand. The prince replied. He knew arguing will do no good. Come alone and pick them up from the statue, said Fenrir. Ezra looked at his father. Father, please excuse me for a moment. I'll be right back. The king, who was attentive to Ezra's consecutive transition of facial expressions, assumed that something was going on. He said no more and nodded. The werewolf prince ran towards the cave in frenzy. When he reached the statue, he saw a ring inside the bowl. Pick it and give it to your father. He'll know what to do. Fenrir guided the prince. The latter did as said and went back. The king was still looking at the cave when Ezra came back. Is there something I should know, son? He asked. Yes, father. God Fenrisulfur gave me this ring to give you. When Mirza looked at the ring, his brows were raised in astonishment. It's a spatial ring. But it's of a higher quality. What's inside of it, son? He questioned his son in elation. That's something I can't reveal. The prince replied with a joyful smile. The king smiled. Looking at his happy boy who was on his deathbed one day ago soothed his heart. He glanced at the ring. It was black with white golden runes art on it. The king wore the ring and poured a little bit of his chi. With a flash of light, a mountain of a treasure fell. The entire pyramid was flooded with gold, jewels, diamonds and whatnot. The imperial guards were buried inside the treasure. After quite a struggle, they made their way upside. This much gold. Look at these jewels, no. These diamonds are worth more than gold and jewels. The guards spoke their mind, as they were bewildered by such wealth. Even the revenue of 10 years of our kingdoms won't be able to compete this wealth, Mirza Zephyr murmured. Amongst them all, only Ezra was not affected by it. Because the treasure he saw earlier cannot even be compared with it. The expressions of the werewolves slowly changed from surprised to ecstatic. Seeing that Ezra closed his eyes and heartfully thanked Fenrir. I didn't even know that rusty ring had treasure in it. I assumed it was empty. Fenrir spoke. Well, this treasure means a lot for stupid mortals like you. Now order them to wipe their drools and search for the cubes and pills, said Fenrir. Pills? What pills? Ezra asked without paying any further heed. The prince said to the king, Father, there are spirit cubes in it as well. Tell everybody to find them. What? There are more spirit cubes. How many? He shouted in reply. Few thousands. Ezra calmly said. Mirza Zephyr's commissures were stretched and twitched. His face showed an evil smile. In this tiny bit of time, he looked into the upcoming future. He slapped his face 2 times to control his senses and ordered right after. Everyone, get a hold of yourselves. There are pill-sized cubes inside this mountain of treasures. Emitting energy. Find them all. Our race is going to be evolved. Hearing that, everyone dropped their weapon, dismounted from flaming Leo horse and dived into the ocean of treasures. After quite a while, someone shouted. I found them. I found them. Thousands of cubic pills. They're here. Note, after bowing to their king earlier, they mounted on flaming Leo horse again. Imperial Guards is a 1,000-man troop that is trained to fight in all formations. Heavy cavalry, heavy infantry as well as individual combat. The king and prince rushed toward the guard. Mirza grabbed Ezra by his wrist to match the speed. When arrived, they saw 100 boxes. 4 of those boxes had numbers on them. 3, 4, 5 and 6. These boxes had cubic spirit pills, while the other boxes were filled with myriads of other pills, valuable for cultivation. What are these cubic pills? Your Majesty. They are giving off ominous energy, Pollard Whitefang said while looking at his liege. These are spirits and the number shows their grade, the king said as he came closer to those boxes. After glancing at the cubic pills for a while, he turned his sight to the other pills. These are not ordinary pills as well. They are extraordinary. He said to himself, Father, accept these pills. Put the rest of the treasure back in the ring. I will tell you how God Fenrisulfur wanted us to distribute them. Every guard who heard that looked at Ezra. At this point, their brain was adjusted to the series of shocks. The king did as told and used the spatial ring to suck all other treasures. He looked at the ring one more time and extended his hand to give it back to his son. What are you doing, father? This ring and whatever inside of it is all yours. The king silently looked at his son and gave off a light chuckle before wearing the ring again. The werewolf king disheveled the hair of his son and said, So how should I use them? Crown Prince Ezra. It was the first time King Mirza Zephyr mentioned his son in such a way. In the game of royalty, this title was second only to king. Even though the title of Crown Prince always goes to the first male-born child, but Mirza never called his son with that title in open. Because of his continuous ill health. From now onward, everyone has to obey Prince Ezra Zephyr as they obey the king. The prince responded with an innocent smile and said, Those guards, from the age of 15 to 25, come forward. The imperial guards were standing in formation. And in a swift manner, 9 people came out. The formation was not disturbed in the slightest, showing the fruits of hard training. One of them was the son of Pollard Whitefang, the young vice commander named Rock Whitefang, commonly known by his nickname Rocky. The second one was a slim and tall man. He was the second vice commander, with the name of Yanni Galearms. Galearms werewolves were famous for their speed. The king only knew the name of these 2 out of 9. Seemingly the other 7 were newly recruits. Introduce yourself, Pollard Whitefang ordered the 9 youths. All 9 of the youths kneed and spoke one by one. My name is Rock Whitefang, son of Pollard Whitefang. 24 years old. I am Yanni Galearms, son of Zarami Galearms. 24 years old. My name is Bilal Coldbone, son of Arbaz Coldbone. 22 years old. My name is Maria Coldbone, daughter of Arbaz Coldbone. 21 years old. The king's eyes widened. Children of Arbaz? Oh my beloved friend. Don't worry and rest in peace. I will take care of your offspring like my own. After that, another female spoke. My name is Axa Milani, daughter of Sumera Milani. 23 years old. I am Hubdar Sharpclaw, son of Kamdar Sharpclaw. 22 years old. I am Helson Ironskin, son of Holden Ironskin. 20 years old. I am Momen Dokrafi, son of Mimam Dokrafi. 20 years old. Hearing their introductions, Mirza Zephyr's eyes became teary. All these people fought with him against Brownmane. Some died and some retired after receiving crippling injuries. Now their children have taken their stead to serve. The king looked at the last person. He was a weak-looking kid and the youngest. After hesitating a little, he spoke. I am Ivar Rathside, son of Fridleif Rathside. 15 years old. What? You are the son of Master Fridleif. Commander Pollard was shocked and shouted. Yes. I am his last son. Ivar answered. Pollard gave a death glare to his son. Commander, I tried to inform you many times, but you were very busy with other matters. Rocky gave his justification. This time, Mirza's eyes couldn't control the salty water. No doubt you are his son. I knew him since I was a kid. You are spitting image of him. Thank God. You are alive. The blood of Friglov the Fearless Rathside. The Fearless? Ivar repeated the new moniker of his father in question. Yes. Enemies knew him by this name. Your father was the most outstanding werewolf warrior. He and your whole tribe killed most of the enemies in the war before sleeping in the embrace of martyrdom. The king replied. Really? Was my father that amazing? Then why didn't he come back alive? My mother never told me about my father. She said I'll know everything if I join the Imperial Guards. That's why I came here. Ivar asked. His tone was wavering. Is that so? Then let's meet your mother after this. I'll tell you everything about your father, the king said as he hugged Ivar. Ezra, who was standing a little far, asked Pollard Whitefang. Uncle Pole. Who was Friglov Rathside? And how come I never heard of Rathside tribe? My prince. Friglov and his whole tribe launched an attack while we were fleeing from Brownmane Empire. He and his whole tribe died there, including his 6 sons and 4 daughters. It seems that his wife came with us together with his last son and stayed low profile all this time. Fridleif launched the attack without informing us or king, because he knew we would have stopped him. I have never seen any werewolf as brave as him. Except our very king, said Pollard. Ezra Zephyr stepped towards Ivar Rathside, seeing that the latter flinched and gave a courtesy salute. Ivar. My name is Ezra Zephyr. Looks like we are of same age. Will you become my friend? The prince said as he extended his hand. Ivar was baffled. After a pause he nodded wildly and clenched Ezra's hand with his both. The prince gave a bright smile before pivoting his head towards the werewolf soldiers. Guards. Bring out the 6th grade cubic pills, said Ezra Zephyr. Receiving the order, Imperial Guard paid no heed and pulled up the box. The box was not your average mundane one. It was of gold, embedded with twinkling pearls. God knows who engraved such delicacy on a box. As the box was opened, there were 14 pills. Didn't Fenrir say he got 98 pills? He must have saved the remaining 84-inch. Ezra Zephyr pondered. He scratched his head in dismay before speaking. Give these 9 6th-grade spirit pills to these 9 people. The entirety of werewolves was shocked. The first one to regain his senses was Pollard Whitefang. He cleared his throat loudly to wake the rest. But his action was futile. Finding no other option, he yelled, Attention! Imperial Guards! Those who will lose their composure in front of the king and crown prince shall face severe punishment. This was more than enough for everyone to gain their senses back. Pollard was not only a commander but was also the instructor and teacher of young guards. His rough and tough nature horrified the young guards. The only kid who saw the loving side of Pollard was Ezra Zephyr. The king stepped forward and picked one cubic spirit pill and gave it to Rocky Whitefang. Then he moved to the side and stood in front of Yanni Galearms. 2 guards carried the box and moved alongside the king. In the same manner, the king distributed the pills to all young ones. I want you 9 to listen to me carefully. The pills you just received are spirit pills. Each pill contains a powerful 6th grade spirit. Consume it and you will awaken a 6th grade spirit. There is no need to be surprised. As for how to consume it, I will teach you later. From today onwards, you will be known as 9 supernovas of Bloodfang Kingdom. All 9 young werewolves bowed and accept the gifts and moniker. After which, the king gave a signal and all 9 moved to the sidelines. Aside from these 9, all other 991 guards will get the 4th grade spirit. The faces of werewolves were brimming with happiness. In this world, power was everything. Even an unsound person will jump in joy if he gets a higher grade spirit. Prior to this, no one dreamt that their spirits can be changed to a higher level. After deciding on the distribution amongst guards, Ezra whispered something in Mirza's ear. "Commander Pollard, come with me and bring the supernovas as well," the king said. The small group stood away from the rest of the guards, and Ezra Zephyr spoke. "You 9 are the future of Bloodfang Kingdom. I will be gone for a few years. Until that time, cultivate here and use those pills to reach new realms. This information must not leak no matter what." Everyone quietly nodded and Ezra continued. "The remaining 5 6th grade cubic pills must be given to young genius werewolves. Choose those children wisely. As for the 5th grade cubic pills, give them to all other werewolves. All the pills must be spent on werewolves and werewolves only." The prince looked at Commander Uncle Pole. "This task will be handled by you. You must not reveal those young werewolves to the world until I come back." "As you command, Crown Prince," Pollard replied respectfully. "Soon, we will change the Bloodfang Kingdom into the mighty Bloodfang Empire," Ezra said. His eyes had a strange blaze in them. The blaze of unbreakable resolve. The king calmly watched his son. Ezra looked at his father and said, "I must go now." "Father, I understand. You can go now. You have your own battle to fight," said Mirza as he hugged his son. This time, there were no wet eyes or tears but bright smiles. Without wasting any time, Ezra Zephyr took his steps towards the cave. The rest of the people kept looking at his back. Who would have thought that the kind prince they know will die inside and the one who will come out will be a completely different person? Not long after, the prince vanished from their sight as he entered the cave. Ezra Zephyr reached the statue of Fenrir. "I am ready," he said. The same flashy blinding light engulfed him, and when he opened his eyes, he was in the Timberland, standing before the gigantic wolf of Norse. "You are good at wasting precious time, boy," Fenrir said with his thunderous voice. "I apologize. This was something I had to do, in order to concentrate on training," the werewolf prince replied. "I am not here to hear weak excuses. Hurry up and wear those chainless shackles." Fenrir pointed towards a stone table. Ezra glanced over there and saw 4 thick shackles. 2 for hands and 2 for legs. He went and picked them up. Each weighs 3 kilograms. After wearing them, he found it hard to take even normal steps. "You will be here for 5 years. And this entire time, these shackles will be your jewelry. Their weight will increase as you progress." "Oh ho. I like your attitude, boy. Now it's time to hammer you into a fine fighter." Ezra wore the shackles. They were round and long. "They look more like bracers than shackles," he murmured. "Then call them bracers. It's meaningless what we call them. If you have ended your word game, then start training. 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 pull-ups, 100 squats and 15 minutes of plank hold. There will be a 10-minute break after you complete a set. You have 2 hours to finish. If you fail to do that by due time, then there will be a punishment," Fenrir explained. Ezra Zephyr gulped lightly and asked, "What will be the punishment?" "Strikes from a whip. Numbers will be decided by the extent of your failure." Fenrir smiled, showing his white sharp teeth. "I will do it," the prince bravely asserted. "That's the willpower, boy. After 2 hours, you will be running for 4 hours continuously. You'll be given a pouch of water. However, you drink is your sole problem. When you complete your running, there will be an hour of body stretching exercise. Creating muscles and power is useless when you lack flexibility. That makes 7 hours. Completing them, you will be sent to the forest, where you'll see a myriad of wild beasts. There will be water and fruitful trees. All you have to do is to survive there for 8 hours. This is your current training schedule. After completing it, you'll get 8 hours to sleep. Sleep is an essential function that allows your body and mind to recharge, leaving you refreshed and alert when you wake up. Healthy sleep also helps the body remain healthy and stave off diseases. Without enough sleep, the brain cannot function. Combining all, that will be 23 hours out of 24 hours. The last hour is for you to repeat the cycle of the entire day in your mind. You'll think about what you did wrong and why. How can you protect yourself from the same measly mistakes? It will greatly help you in surviving in the forest as well as against an opponent who you have fought before. In simple words, that hour is for you to make a plan. This is the schedule of your training for the first 3 months. It was not included in my mind before. But seeing your pathetic weak body, I had no other choice. So shake your leg. With 100 push-ups first. I'm confident in push-ups. I have been doing it for a year. The prince said as he lay down on his hands, preparing to do the first push-up. The prince successfully managed to do 9 push-ups. When he went down for the 10th, his arms refused to lift him up. It was at this moment that he knew he is doomed. His arms shook, and sweat poured down from his forehead. What is this? I have been secretly doing push-ups in my chamber to strengthen my weak body. My limit was 53. Why my body is giving up at only 9? He continuously questioned himself as he tried to raise his chest. Ezra read his mind and answered, "You took those bracers way too lightly, boy. Your body was already weak. There are 2 differences between doing push-ups here and in your chamber. Your chamber has a smooth floor made of the finest marbles in your kingdom, while the ground here is rough and coarse, wielding the power to injure your hands with minuscule pebbles. Second and most important is your body weight. You are carrying an additional 12 kilograms on your body. And one more thing. If you didn't complete your 1 round within 10 seconds, you will receive punishment. My body is aching. I need time to adjust with these bracers." The prince pleaded. "You have successfully failed to complete your round in 10 seconds. Grit your teeth," the monstrous wolf said as he gave a tentative look at the forest before speaking again. "Come out." A greenish humanoid beast came out. His tusk protruded. His hand was holding a thorny long whip. He came forward and knelt before Fenrir. Then he turned his head towards Ezra Zephyr and knelt before him as well and uttered respectfully, "Forgive me for what I am about to do. O chosen one. I have been selected for this." "Selected?" Fenrir selected him for punishing me. "What kind of race is this?" The young werewolf prince pondered. "He is a hobgoblin. An evolved race of goblins. He has been frozen for hundreds of years in a time zone. He was an executor in this lower realm. His mastery in wielding a whip impressed me." Fenrir replied indifferently. He laid back at the entrance of the cave like before, enjoying the show. Hobgoblin addressed Ezra Zephyr, "Brace yourself, chosen one. Here I come." Ezra Zephyr's widened as the hobgoblin closed the distance between them. Ezra was still there in the push-up pose. The hobgoblin clenched the handle of the whip and jerked his arm. The jerk was so swift and flexible that the arm seemed as if it was made of rubber. The whip descended down, slashing the air. The whip vanished and there was only a blur with a buzzing sound. It all happened in a millisecond. The whip landed on the feather-soft back of the gentle prince. The prince cried his soul out. But it was not the end of it. The thorns dug inside of his back. The hobgoblin used his malleable arm and pulled the whip. The whip tore off the skin on its way out of Ezra's back. The prince cried again, much louder than before. Eventually, he couldn't bear the pain and fainted out. Seeing Ezra collapse, Fenrir looked at his duo cubs. The crimson-colored cub moved towards Ezra. There was a pouch on his neck. He picked a pill with his teeth and inserted into Ezra's mouth. Within a few seconds, Ezra opened his eyes. The moment he regained his senses, the tormenting pain invaded again. When he was wearing those bracers, Fenrir told him to wear off the spiritual armor he had when he came in first. Ezra was growling and swerving in pain. He looked at Fenrir with eyes full of hatred. What are you waiting for, dumbass? Hurry up or receive another pleasant whip. The prince quickly came back to his posture and started doing push-ups. He found that his arms got the power back. He could easily do push-ups. When you perform this basic exercise, you face two difficulties. One is the exhaustion of power, and the other is unbearable pain. The pill I gave you when you collapsed had the effect of giving strength to the consumer, but it will not reduce the intensity of pain in the slightest. You will get the pill when you collapse from the whip. Let me remind you that the whip is made from the skin of a special type of serpent. A serpent whose poison is not deadly but extremely painful. Each slash will increase the sense of pain. Fenrir explained while Ezra was still doing push-ups. Finally, the youth completed one set of 100 push-ups, but his back was all meat with no skin on it. He received 12 slashes and 10 pills to succeed. Take a break and begin the other exercise. It's 100 sit-ups, boy. Haha. Fenrir chuckled as he said. After resting for minutes, Ezra stood up. He felt as if his arms and legs were exploding. The whipping boosted his pain sense, including the muscle pain. His body was giving up. It was his resolved mentality that wanted to keep doing. Time passed, and there was not a single area with intact skin from his neck back to his feet. The prince was crying in pain as he was holding on to the plank hold position. That's it. You completed 15 minutes of spank hold. With that, you completed the last exercise. There are still 18 minutes remaining in 2 hours. Well done, boy. Fenrir praised the prince. Ezra Zephyr fell on his chest and closed his eyes to take nap. The same crimson cub came with a new pill. Ezra heard his coming steps and forcefully opened his eyes to see. He looked at the pill left by the cub and ate it. Within a minute, his entire torn skin from slashes was mended back. What a godly pill! He exclaimed. Ezra tried to stand, but a shrill pain attacked his legs, arms and joints. What? He was shocked. Fenrir intervened his pondering and said the pill has an only function of repairing skin injuries. It won't affect muscle pain. These exercises will gather scary power in your body. The more you train your muscles and flexibility, the more explosive the power will be. Hear that? Ezra was motivated. He gathered his strength and stood in a sudden swerve. I will evolve myself here. Train me, Fenrir. No shit. You dumbass. Fenrir cussed again. Is he really someone who was once with gods and heroes? He questioned himself. You know that I can read thoughts, don't you? Fenrir said with his eyes squinted. Ezra nodded his head as a formality and spoke. What's next? 4 hours of running. Good news. There is no whipping in this training. Fenrir said indifferently. Really? He asked. Yes. There will be worse, said Fenrir. The light enveloped Ezra and he vanished. Ezra opened his eyes as dazzling light ended. He looked at his surroundings and assumed he has been thrown to the center of the forest. Ezra inspected all directions and found Gobgoblin standing on a boulder. Fenrir said there won't be whip slashes in this training. Why are you here? He said as he took a few steps away in fear. The hobgoblin knelt and answered. I'm here to feed you pills when necessary. That's all I will do here. Be careful, O chosen one. This is not the forest you saw earlier. This is a training ground. An artificial magical space that contains various landscapes, beasts and weathers. This one has the landscape of a jungle, beasts and insects containing painful poison and the weather of autumn. Survive here for 4 hours. If you ask for my advice, I'll suggest you keep running like me. Saying that, Hobgoblin jumped and ran. Where are insects or beasts? The prince thought as he looked here and there. With a dingy sound, Ezra Zephyr's foot was stabbed by something. He attempted to jump away quickly but failed by falling. What he saw was a needle protruding out of the ground. The soil there started to scatter and a leg-sized insect emerged. Scorpion. Prince murmured. Its tail was black like the rest of its body, but the sting of the scorpion was scorching red, emitting heat. Looking at that, Ezra felt a burning sensation. He felt as if his foot has been set on fire. With one foot injured, Ezra jounced his way forward on the other foot. The scorpion followed the prince. Ezra jerked his head to find the hobgoblin. Hey, give me a pill. I cannot run with my foot. He yelled, facing upward. I cannot give you anything unless you collapse or your condition reaches the death door. Hobgoblin said as he crossed Ezra while running. You irritating goblin. I will kill you. The change in Ezra started. For the first time he said something negative to someone who was simply doing his job. The prince's speed slowed down when his mind was distracted. It was enough for the scorpion to catch up. The scorpion caught the leg of Ezra with its pedipalp. With a crunching sound, his leg was torn off. Ezra Zephyr was swerving in pain. Blood oozed from his leg. Scorpion went for the final blow, but before it could do anything, the hobgoblin darted in and knocked the scorpion away. He extended his hand towards the pouch on his waist. Ezra's eyes were getting blurry. He felt something was shoved inside his throat. He was about to throw up, but instead, he gulped down. Soon the leg began to regenerate, and the vagueness on his eyes evanesced. He saw the ugly face of the hobgoblin. He questioned in a dull voice. You saved me? Yes, I did. Oh, chosen 1 inch. He answered. My leg? It's been regenerated. You must start running. That scorpion is the least scary insect here. Be careful. Hobgoblin vanished after completing his piece. He didn't actually vanish. He just ran at a speed Ezra couldn't catch with his naked eye. Focusing on what he was told, Ezra stood up quickly and looked at his surroundings, including the ground and sky. He learned one thing. Standing in one place for a minute is akin to calling death. He started to run lightly along the boulevard. The intelligent prince was saving his stamina. His eyes were wide open, cautious and sharp, like that of a beast. Out of a sudden, a silhouette came from a side. Instincts of Ezra kicked in and he subconsciously raised his arms for protection. Ezra's pulse paced as he saw a venomous snake, with finger-long fangs, was about to bite him. With the swift reaction of Ezra, he was saved. Luckily, the snake bit the bracers instead of Ezra. The bracers were thick. Snake's mouth was stuck there. Ezra pondered for a second, solving what to do. He raised the arm with the snake hanging on and smashed it on the ground. Then, he lifted his other arm and smacked it down on the head of the snake. Snake's head was crushed between the weight of 2 bracers. Ezra understood that this is not an easy forest. Ezra, who was still lost in his thought, heard a buzzing noise. He jerked his head only to find a head-size bee floating around his neck. What? When did it come this close? The prince asked himself in fear. Unlike before, the prince's reflexes failed. As the sword-like sting pierced the back of Ezra, Ezra fell to the ground. His body was paralyzed. Unlike the time of Scorpion, there was not any burning sensation. Not long after, Ezra stood up. Looked safe and sound. Thanks to his luck, there were no insects at the time he was paralyzed. Ezra felt nothing changed in his condition. Only a thumb-size hole on his back. The young werewolf marched forward. This time he was running faster than before. Suddenly, Ezra felt an urge to itch. It was the poison of a bee. A poison that can cause a deadly allergy in the body. With each scratch, the urge increased. The prince kept scratching his body to the point that he started to bleed. His cries penetrated the sky. Cries full of pain, helplessness and weakness. Still, during all this process, Ezra didn't stop running. Although the speed decreased tremendously, his feet never refused to move. Ezra was tearing his skin with his nails. Blood and tears kept coming from him until he collapsed. Hobgoblin jumped and gave the pill to Ezra. He was looking at the fragile prince in awe. How could he run with this weak body after that bee stung him? He wondered. It was the first time. Hobgoblin inspected the body of Ezra because he was unconscious. He took out the pill and inserted in Ezra Zephyr's mouth. The cycle of regeneration repeated. It was the same pill. Regardless of how many times Ezra regenerated, he was still feeling the muscle pain. Hobgoblin took out a bottle of water and gave it to Ezra. This is the only water you have here. Take my advance and run, he said and vanished again. Ezra drank 2 mouthfuls of water. He closed his eyes. Images of his parents and kingdom rotated in his head. He opened his eyes and darted ahead at full speed. 4 hours passed, and Ezra was brought back in front of Fenrir. Haha. How was it, boy? He laughed before asking. Ezra was not in the position to talk. His body reeked the smell of sweat, and he was panting like a racing dog. Fenrir spoke again. Take a break and catch your breath. Next exercise is easiest. You just have to do some stretchings. Ezra took a breath and gulped down the water he had left in the bottle. What does stretching do? the exhausted prince asked. Flexibility. How many times do you want me to tell you? Dan Medboy? There are 6 exercises regarding stretching. You just have to do one exercise for 10 minutes. Fenrir retorted. The prince nodded and closed his eyes. Few minutes later, he heard the voice of Fenrir. It's time for next training. Boy. Wake your ass. Ezra stood up and looked at Fenrir. The latter understood the meaning of gaze and spoke again. Shoulder exercise. Back exercise. Quads exercise. Hamstring exercise. Hips exercise, and lastly, neck exercise. That's what you have to do for an hour now. Hobgoblin will teach you how to do it. Ezra looked at Hobgoblin, who was performing the stretch and mimic him. The easiest exercise ended in a blink and Ezra reached the final training. The survival in the forest. After relaxing a bit, Fenrir gave Ezra the pouch of pills. This one has 10 pills of regeneration. Use wisely. There won't be whipping and neither the insects that will attack you the moment you stop. This is an actual forest. Sometimes you can easily roam inside without worry, while some other times your life will be at the stack in a matter of seconds. I understand. This is an art of survival. I have to be alert even if I take nap. Ezra said as he stepped forward, stared at Fenrir and uttered, I am ready. The face of Ezra was confident and indifferent. After preparing himself, Ezra was sent to the middle of the forest. This time it was a real forest, from where he heard numerous howls and wild cries when he first arrived. During the 4 hours of running in magical space, he learned a few things about the forest. First thing was to keep your senses sharp and the other was to look where you are stepping. A small mistake or noise can catch the attention of unfriendly beasts. Keeping that in mind, the prince moved on. He was hearing various chirps of birds, cries of monkeys and roars of beasts. Some beasts cultivate as well. Their cultivation levels are the same as that of martial masters. Those beasts are called martial animals. But they do not possess spirits. They can only cultivate and grow by eating other beasts. Martial animals or martial masters and absorb their powers inside their heart. Instead of chi or mana, they possess a unique power called force. Force is an energy that possesses the qualities of both chi and mana. Any beast can become martial animal if it eats a variety of other beasts or possesses a unique and pure bloodline. Purer the bloodline, larger the amount of cultivation a martial animal can absorb from its prey. Ezra Zephyr read that all from books. The young bookworm's feet continued to move forward as he recalled all that. A loud slamming noise occurred from somewhere not so far. Ezra looked at his surroundings. An ear-busting roar gave Ezra the direction of the noise. He was puzzled. His mind was holding a battle between thoughts. He was pondering whether to go and check or to ignore and hide. After a few breaths, the young werewolf prince decided to go and look. Ezra darted towards the side where the roar came from. He crossed the bushes and his eyes widened. He saw a dinosaur and a frog fighting near a pond. Ezra Zephyr understood what are they fighting for. It was a fight for the control of the pond. Both frog and dinosaur were martial animals. Ezra thought after seeing the aura-like energy emitted from them, but he couldn't tell the realm of their cultivation. Only another martial master can detect it. Currently, Ezra was not a master but a simple mortal with the curse of God. Just after sending a loud croak, the frog opened his mouth and his sticky long tongue moved like a whip. That gave Ezra chills. He remembered the slashes from Hobgoblin. The dinosaur jumped into the sky and dodged the tongue by hair's breadth. As it landed down, it widened his small arms. Force blades extended from its nails. The frog didn't attack this time. He understood it will end up being cut by those force blades. The frog jumped vertically, many times higher than the jump of the dinosaur. It fell down like a meteor on the pond. The water splashed and reached the dinosaur. It roared and drew back its blades. It was the perfect opportunity for frog. An opening. The frog didn't miss that chance and attacked with the same sticky long tongue. It snaked its way and wrapped around on dinosaur's neck. The frog backflipped and dived into the pond. The dinosaur was dragged inside as well. Ezra Zephyr gulped, and a drop of tear rolled down his temple. After no further movements, Ezra decided to move on before things get strange. Suddenly, the pool turned red. With a loud cry, the dinosaur came out. He was chewing the tongue of a frog. He used the force blades in due time and saved himself. He drank the bloodied water from the pond and went into the deep woods. Ezra's fear rose within his heart. He didn't know what to do. How can I survive if I face a martial animal? He pondered in fear. Soon. The 4 hours were completed without even using a single pill. Ezra was brought back in front of Fenrir. How was your experience, boy? He asked. Will be a lie if I say I enjoyed it. The prince answered. Ho ho. That was expected. Well, think about the entire day for 1 hour. If you sleep before an hour, you will be whipped. Ezra Zephyr sat in the lotus position and started repeating all the details. Regardless of small or big. After doing what was told, Ezra finally got the opportunity to sleep. Ah. My precious sleep, he said and slept on the rough ground. The next day came way faster than Ezra thought. He has to do the same hellish training just went through yesterday. When Ezra woke up, he didn't feel any fatigue, just muscle pain. He completed the exercises but consumed double the amount than yesterday. In no time, 3 months passed. The current Ezra could easily do the exercises and run without the help of pills. With a new day, Ezra woke up, ready to do his daily routine, and when he heard Fenrir's voice. I have prepared your weapons, is that so? The young prince said. There was no sign of fear or respect in his eyes. He talked as he was trying to mock Fenrir. So, where is my sword? The prince asked for his weapon. There won't be swords. Or there are, but not for you, ho ho ho. Fenrir laughed. What do you mean? I mean the weapons you will use are not long swords or spears. A box arrived, carried by none other than Hobgoblin. Your weapons are in there, Fenrir said without wasting a single second. Ezra went to check. When he opened the box, he saw a huge chain. Both of its ends were tied by weapons. One was a dull short sword made from metal, while the other was a hook, a pointy hook with small saw blades on top, similar size to the short sword. Ezra picked it up. It's heavy. That's what he said. I know because I designed it. These weapons and chains combined have 10 kilograms weight in them. You will use these in your pieces of training as well. Together with braces. A total of 22 kilograms weight. That's a feather-like weight for a prince. Ezra uttered. Says the one who just yelled it's heavy, ho-ho. Fenrir mocked as he chuckled. Ezra Zephyr was inspecting the weapons given to him. What notions drove you to make this piece of crap? The prince said as he gazed at Fenrir. You are learning the ways of the trash-talking. Nice going, boy. Ezra scoffed. Heh. Thanks to you. Wannabe god. He derided. Fenrir frowned. Who do you call a wannabe god? Dumb boy. I hate gods. Don't ever tag my name with them hypocrites, self-proclaimed superiors. Seems like I find your sensitive vein. He giggled. The 3 months of training changed Ezra by a large margin. These weapons are prototypes of the originals. This changed 10-meter-long chain is useful in various ways. The hook has 2 purposes. First is to catch a running prey and second is to defend. It's thick and solid, containing small bladed on top, with poison on them. A small gash from it can be fatal. Lastly, the short sword. I don't think you want me to tell what it can do. The monstrous wolf of Norse explained. I understand. Now that you say, it's quite a tricky designed set of weapons. He wrapped the chain on his arms and hung the hook and short sword on the sides of his waist. Without saying any further, Ezra began his first training of push-ups. His arms gave up when he reached the 73rd push-up. He immediately understood what will happen next. An air-slicing whip swung and socked his back. Unlike prior times, Ezra didn't let out a single noise. He was getting used to it. Being punished for 3 months, he managed to learn the art of hiding pain. He gritted his teeth. It was not that he couldn't feel the pain. The intensity and sensation were the same all the time. It was his durability that raised impressively. After receiving some bloody punishment, he reached the running training. The same magical jungle with venomous insects and beasts. Ezra picked up the hook and sword in both hands and reached a certain area. After waiting for a while, he felt a dim vibration and jumped hurriedly. With an astonishing speed, a tail came out. On top of it was the red blazing sting. The beast came out and revealed his entire body. It was the same scorpion that tormented Ezra on first day. This time, I'm here for the payback, he said. The scorpion ran towards Ezra. The latter knew his speed and started to run to the side of a tall tree. To his misfortune, His speed was not as accurate as he assumed. The scorpion caught up. His pedipalps snipped like sharp scissors. Ezra threw the hook at the scorpion, but it stopped midway before hitting the scorpion. The reason was obvious. It was connected with chains wrapped around Ezra's arms. But still, his action didn't go in vain. The scorpion was surprised by the hook, and his march stopped. Ezra took this opportunity and climbed onto the tree. A silhouette jumped to a branch next to Prince's. "Why are you here?" "I'm not injured," Ezra questioned. "The weapons you got are extremely useful and dangerous. But only if you master them. I came to tell you that. Take care, O chosen one," the man said and vanished. It was none other than the hobgoblin. After spending 4 hours running, he was sent to survive in the forest, encountering death many times. Ezra always came out alive, receiving a myriad of injuries. 9 months later, within a blink of an eye, 1 whole year passed since Ezra came to train. Ezra woke up. He touched his disheveled long hair and shoved them backwards with his fingers. He stood up. His body was perfect. Not bulky nor skinny. Containing only 9% fat and 91% muscles. An epitome of a perfect body. In the recent months, Ezra's height grew a few inches, including the weight of his bracers. He was carrying a total of 60 kilograms weight on him. There were 4 bracers on his 4 limbs, each having 10 kilograms of weight. Apart from them, the weapons owned 10 kilograms weight. What the new thing was a stone-made collar. A collar on his neck that also weighed 10 kilograms. Fenrir looked at the prince and smiled. It was a way of praising him. "That's disgusting. Stop smiling, you creepy dog," the no longer innocent prince said. All right. Kobold prince. Ho ho. Fenrir spoke and laughed. Ha ha ha. That was a good one. The prince guffawed along. Their bond was strong. Even though they always taunt, mock and tease each other, they both also knew that each of the two is nothing without the presence of the other. "I'm off to training. Don't disturb me, wait boy. 1 year of your beginner training has ended. Now I will begin your real training," said Fenrir. Ezra Zephyr squinted his eyes and inquired. "That was only beginner level?" "Indeed. Let me start your real training." Ezra calmed himself and observed. From within the cave, 6 puppets came out. 1 puppet had a sword. A normal-sized sword. The second one had a spear. A long spear. That puppet was skinny. The third in number wore gauntlets. His body was bulky and towering. 4th in line had 2 daggers. It was short height and was jumping, showing off his agility. The 5th one was a tall chubby puppet. His height was only shorter than the puppet with gauntlets. It was holding a gigantic axe hammer. The last 6th one was a female puppet. Its hairs were long. Breast pumped. It had a bow on her back and an arrow box on her waist. "Prince Ezra Zephyr, you will fight these 6 for the rest of 4 years. You will fight each of them 2 times. 1 time with your weapons and 1 time with bare hands. Each round will be for 1 hour. You will rest for 5 minutes and begin the next round. If you fight each puppet 2 times, then it will be 12 hours. Count 5 minutes for 12 fights. It will be an additional hour. 13 hours of combat. 8 hours of sleeping and then 1 hour of planning. That's your new training routine. Finally, I can learn fighting. Thank you, Fenrir. Watch me destroying these puppets." The prince boasted, hearing that. Fenrir laughed. "Ho ho. What a delusional, naive prince you are." Ezra peered at the puppets and Fenrir spoke. "Which one do you want to train with first?" The prince squinted his eyes and looked at a certain puppet. "This one, the spear wielder. Any reason behind, boy?" The giant wolf inquired. "I heard the prince of the Brownmane Empire use a spear," the vengeful prince uttered. There was a spark in his eyes. A spark that contains the power to kindle a pyre. The monstrous wolf squinted his eyes. Ezra's expressions captivated his attention. "Brownmane Empire? Since when did such an empire exist?" he said. "You don't know? They were once our subjects, but then they retaliate and took my level 6 spirit red-scaled wolf. Thanks to their betrayal, I was able to meet you," Ezra explained. "How many empires are there now?" The wolf asked. 5 empires and 11 kingdoms. Ezra Zephyr answered right after. "That many on this small continent?" During Bjorn's era, there were only 3 empires. Elven, Dwarvish and Bloodfang Empire. There was nothing as the kingdom. Fenrir punned. What do you mean small continent? The continent is big and prosperous. Only 2/5 of land belongs to kingdoms and empires. The rest of 3/5 is under the power of sex. There are treaties and laws. Empires will not meddle between the affairs of sex, and likewise, the sex will not interfere in the quarrels of empires. Ezra Zephyr sassed, I know. It was your great-great-grandfather Bjorn Zephyr who set those laws, said the wolf. Ezra's eyes widened with his mouth agape. Really? It was our empire who set those rules. Why did I never read that anywhere? History can be changed with enough power, Fenrir said as he looked at Ezra, teaching him the limitlessness of power. Well said, Fenrir. I shouldn't be jumping in joy for something done by our family 50 generations ago. Well, enough with repartee, Ezra said as he stepped forward and slid his hands towards his waist, in order to take out his hook and short sword. The puppet with the spear came forward as well. It was a strange puppet. It was made from an unknown material. It had a skin on it and had the features of a normal being. Even though all of them had the same face, but different build. The puppet opened his eyes. His face gave a nasty wicked smile, as if he already knew what would be the outcome of this training. He jerked his arms, and the wrapped chain was loosened, giving his weapons a wide range. Ezra started to spin the chain attached to the sword. Akin to a tornado, the sword whirled. Ezra became familiar with his chain-attached weapons. He could now use both close combat and ranged attacks. Ezra threw the spinning sword at the spear wielder, but to his shock, there was not a single wrinkle on his face. The puppet didn't move an inch. As the sword approached, he just simply raised his spear. The spinning sword stopped. What? It didn't cut through. How? The prince was confused. He killed many insects and small beasts with that technique in the prior year. He also managed to kill that scorpion and that bee, which showed him what being in hell feels like. You underestimated them. That's your biggest mistake, boy. You boasted about killing them the moment they arrive. You didn't even care to ask me about these strange puppets. Fenrir told Ezra, shut up. I'll figure it out on my own. The prince retorted. Fenrir frowned, look at the audacity of this cocky dickhead bastard. Alright then. I'll just quietly watch you getting your arse kicked. Ezra's attention was focused on the puppet. He didn't make any reckless movement. When the puppet sensed that Ezra has no intention to attack, he hurtled toward him instead. Unlike Ezra, his march was many times faster. Within the blink of an eye, he closed the distance. Due to his surprise, his balance was off. The spear wielder jabbed his spear, fast and precise. It came like an arrow and pierced the chest of the prince. Feeling the sheer pain, Ezra fell to the ground and cried loudly. Ho ho ho. The giant wolf of Norse cackled. Fenrir, give me the pill. I'll die. Ezra said, his hopeful eyes gazing at the wolf. Foolish werewolf, you are not dead. Look at his spear, listening to that. Ezra looked at the spear of the puppet. It was not real, but a wooden spear used for practice. Then Ezra looked at his chest. There was no hole or blood. I felt it. It pierced my chest. There is still pain. Ezra stuttered. That's his mastery in spear wielding. That's the only thing that he has superior to you. He doesn't have chi or mana. The amount of physical strength he has is similar to you. It's a training of techniques and mastery of weapons. Fight these puppets and hone the mastery of your weapons, said the wolf. Ezra tried to get up. But before he could, the puppet jumped and spun in midair. He sent another jab downwards. For Ezra, it felt like an arrow released from a longbow. The spear landed on the forehead. The blood oozed from his head. But the wielder didn't hit the pointy blade in front of the spear. He hit Ezra with the back end of the spear. Gay-hee-hee. The spear wielder giggled. Ezra's eyes were red. He knew one thing for sure. The puppet was not normal. He had a nature and characteristics. He was not fighting Ezra. He was simply playing with him. His blood boiled, and he unwrapped the chains with a simple swing of his arms. 10-meter-long chain in each hand. He started waving them, making it difficult for puppets to step forward. One of the chains had a strong hook, while the other had a blunt short sword. He aimlessly spun the chains, and the spear-wielding puppet's smile vanished. Ezra caught that and pondered, is it working? In the next second, The puppet threw his spear straight. The spear hit the forehead of Ezra again. The oozing blood increased as Ezra fell to the ground unconscious. Gihihihi. The wicked spearman giggled. Fenrir looked at the puppet and murmured, I hate this guy to my core. If not only for Ezra's training. Soon the hobgoblin came to perform his job and Ezra woke up. He touched his forehead and gazed at the puppet wielding the wooden spear. Want to ask something now, boy? Fenrir said as he smiled. The werewolf prince quietly nodded his head. His cockiness vanished after such an utter defeat. It has been a while since he felt helpless. He gritted his teeth and stood up. These puppets are made after real persons. Now you have been wondering who those people are, right? Well, I can give you a hint. These people have the highest grade of spirit present and a single one of them has enough power to destroy this lower realm. The martial spirit of the one who battered you is my archenemy. Odin, the All-Father. Fenrir growled. His huge canines were revealed. The timber started to quake. Ezra sensed needles piercing his soul. He fell to his knees. And squeezed his chest as he yelled Fenrir. Huh. The monstrous wolf of Norse came back to his senses. Forgive me, boy. The memories of the past always torment in present and terrorize the future. I am no exception in this, said Fenrir as he sighed. Listen carefully, Ezra. These 6 are ones of many people you have to kill in future. Focus on your training and understand them. The techniques these puppets are using are centuries old. The originals must have upgraded them by a large margin, but still. It's way beyond the mastery the lower realm martial masters have over weapons. Ezra's eyes widened. He gulped as he looked at each of those puppets. Each one can destroy the whole lower realm. He murmured. The prince was bewildered. Let's make your training a little bit more interesting, Fenrir said as the light engulfed Ezra. Ah shit. Here we go, said the prince. The moment he opened his eyes, he found himself on an icy mountain. Cold gales blew with ferocity. Where am I? The prince pondered. A thought came to his mind, is this place an artificial space? Like that of the forest suits me right. The prince replied. His hands started to get frost. He squinted his eyes to look and found a shadow coming out of the squall of wind. Soon after the prince was able to clearly see that in front of him was the same spear-wielder puppet, giggling at him. Ezra took a deep breath and exhaled the warm air on his hands before clenching his dual weapons. Eat him up, O chosen 1-inch. Hobgoblin's voice resonated. He was near but was hidden inside the snowy gusts. Ezra chuckled in response, haha, I was wondering where the hell are you? The puppet and Ezra looked at each other before bolting towards each other. Hobgoblin was panting, ah. This heat, he said as he wiped his forehead, dropping droplets of sweat. His eyes were locked on a youth, a 6 feet 2 inches heightened man. His figure was less filled to be called bulky. His body and muscles were made as if a sculpture has carved those designs on him. The way he was stretching showed as if he was made of rubber and those muscles and body were fake. He had braided long hair with no beard or mustache. He had a hook in his left hand and a blunt short sword in his right. With a 100 meters long chain connecting the duo. The youth stopped stretching and looked at his surrounding. So we have finally reached the climax, said Ezra as he looked in all directions. He was surrounded by 6 puppets. The same 6 puppets that were made after some monstrous martial masters. All of them were on a volcanic field. A gigantic space of flamed ground with oozing lava sprays. The mocking spear wielder was now angry and darted in. Along with him came the short puppet with daggers. From another side, the swordsman marched. Beside him was the puppet of gauntlets. Big, bulky and barbarian. A figure was in the sky, right above Ezra. Its axe hammer descent down on Ezra, together with his chubby body. At a distance, the female-looking puppet released 10 arrows at once, all coming to take Ezra's life. After years of fighting with them on different weathers and grounds, Ezra understood the puppet's techniques and they couldn't defeat him alone anymore. So, Fenrir decided to allow all 6 puppets to fight Ezra. If he wins with all his bracers on, his physical training will end. Ezra looked at the aggressive incoming guests. He jerked his arm and spun it in nanoseconds. The long and heavy chain made a wave and that wave made an irregular rotation. All the 10 incoming arrows struck the chain and stopped. This was the mastery he learned from Hobgoblin's whipping and years of bringing that chain along. Ezra saw the spearman coming. He dashed towards him and jerked his arm again. The same rotating wave of chain occurred. It was large. The puppets looked at it for a tiny moment and continued to charge. The spear puppet stomped the ground. His foot thumb dug inside as he spun at god speed and threw the spear at Ezra. The prince moved his waist and leaned backwards. With the help of Hook, he managed to parry the spear in meantime. As the spear was dodged, the dagger puppet closed the distance. Ezra looked at it with a side eye and pulled the chain of his sword. With a strange sound, the rotating wave of the chain was stretched and entangled the arms of dagger puppets. Previously, when puppets saw the chain, they understood the risk as well. But they believed that they will easily escape from an entanglement of such a wide trap. But to their misfortune, they were wrong. The wave of the chain was like a knot, waiting for a single pull to tighten itself up. The swordsman slashed, but was stopped by Ezra's hook. Ezra sent him flying after a swift kick on the belly. The gauntlet puppet sent a calculated straight punch. Ezra dodged it by hair's breadth and answered with a hook. The giant puppet fell to its knees. At that time another giant was a few inches away from Ezra. The prince spun as if he was dancing and jumped. At the perfect timing, he swung his leg. With a cracking sound, the spin jump kick successfully hit the chubby puppet. The prince looked at the bow puppet, who threw away its weapon and surrendered. 3 seconds. He defeated them all in 3 seconds. Hobgoblin mumbled in astonishment. Finally, I have done it. You saw everything, Hobgoblin. Didn't you? The young werewolf prince said. Yes. O chosen one. I witnessed your greatness. He replied. My hairs have become rough and annoying. Is there any plant here that can make my hair silky? Ezra pondered as he touched his long braided hair. All of a sudden, with the familiar flash, Ezra was in another place. A place akin to his home. It was the timberland where he first met Fenrir. Ezra gazed upon what was in front of him. A humongous black wolf, taking nap. He squinted his eyes and yelled at the giant wolf of Norse. Hey wannabe god. How do you do? Oh lord. The hobgoblin commented in a dim voice. Fenrir opened his eyes. He'd sked when his sight landed on Ezra. Did I make a mistake choosing him? I was making an atrocious host, but ended up creating a rascal, he thought. After a moment of thinking, the wolf chuckled inside his head and replied, How do you do? Kobold boy. He mocked back. I defeated the puppets. Is there anything else remaining in your shitty training? Said the prince. No. There isn't anything. The voice of Fenrir sounded heavy. Ezra caught that change in tone and asked right away, What's troubling you, Fenrir? Tell me. It is time to make me your spirit. But there is something I must tell you. Ezra nodded silently, ready to receive whatever Fenrir speak. Once I insert myself in your body, I will fight with the Thunder Ophidian curse. Fenrir paused and glared at Ezra before continuing. Do you remember what I told you about curses? Yes. I do. They are some sort of magic. Sorcery that deprives something of the prey. It can be power, health, intelligence, or even cultivation. Ezra Zephyr answered. Good. Now listen to me carefully. As a spirit, I can grow by devouring other spirits. This Ophidian curse inside you is high-level sorcery and has become a spiritual entity that has similar power as that of a spirit. I will devour it the moment I make you my host. That curse will fight me back, but I can handle it. The thing I am worried about is the process of making your own force. Ezra furrowed his brows and questioned, My force? By force, you mean the power used by martial animals? Exactly. Fenrir replied. Ezra stretched his back and spoke again, but how is this possible? Only martial animals can use it because they devour the other Marty. Something came to Ezra's mind, and his eyes widened. Wait a minute. How could I forget that you also devour other spirits like martial animals? There is a possibility that I can use force as well. You caught the point fast, despite being dumb. However, what I am worried about is whether or not you successfully design the force I want. If you succeed and establish a force of my wish, then perhaps your name may also be counted in scariest martial sorcerers of all time. Fenrir rendered his worry. Scariest martial sorcerers. Ezra understood the weight behind those words. In the lower realm of Zatra, sorcerers are less in numbers than cultivators. However, in deadly battles, the majority of victories were grabbed by the side that had a higher caliber of sorcerers. The werewolf prince clenched his fist and spoke boldly. What do you want me to do? Fenrir? Just tell me. I will surpass your expectations, soul. Fenrir uttered right after. Soul? Ezra repeated the word in confusion. Design your force while keeping that word in mind. That's more than enough guidance. If you cannot, then maybe you are not made for this. Fenrir said, hearing that. Ezra's body flinched. His ego was hurt. And the pain of humiliation he forgot haunted him again. Through your mind. Boy. Fenrir answered, and continued. A sorcerer or cultivator gets the type of mana and chi respectively, based on the spirits they possess. But how do martial animals, who don't have spirits at all, develop their force? Each martial animal has its unique force. But how is it possible without a spirit? Will beastmen or other species can achieve force if they devour the raw meat of martial masters? Ezra was stunned. I never read anything pertaining to that. He said. Fenrir scorned in return. These are some mind-boggling questions for someone with a smart head. Which is not you. So don't blame yourself and follow my instructions. A martial animal designed the force with his thoughts. It creates an intelligence that wishes a certain type of power. A power that can use chi skills and mana spells as well. An example for you to understand: if a martial animal is scared or fond of fire and keeps thinking of it, then eventually the force's intelligence would design will have fire attributes. From day one, I have been giving you secret hints about the soul. The pills that don't relieve your pain yet boost your strength were soul-strengthening pills. The artificial space and the beasts inside of it. How were they alive if they were artificial and the martial animals killing each other? What is that specific thing that makes someone dead? What leaves your body that decides you are no longer alive? And how those puppets you just defeated a few moments ago were moving like real living beings? Why do they have attitude and ego? The answer to all those questions is soul. They all had a soul in their body, and if the soul of a living leaves its body, that individual will be considered dead. It's just that I never signified that word and yet fed you at the same time silently in your subconscious. The real training was feeding your mind with soul-concerning thoughts. For this day the Crown Prince of Bloodfang Kingdom was bewildered by the master plan of Fenrir. Ezra stayed quiet for quite a while. He took a deep breath and said only 5 words. You truly are a monster. Ezra kept looking at Fenrir in awe. He finally understood why the upper realm was so eager to kill this wolf.